26. When the battle reached at the moment, the two sides had already invested almost all their combat power. In the sky, the high-tech flight devices of the Atlanteans are trying their best to prevent Darkseid's fleet from approaching the ground. On the ground, the Earth-allied forces were fully mobilized to fight Darkseid's seemingly innumerable demon-like army. Among them is the battle between the elites of both sides. Among the 12 main gods, Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, Ares, Apollo, Artemis, Athena, at the moment are also in the Dark Elites. Mantis, Cantor, Motera, Titan, Dr. Chaos, Miracle Grace and Glory Godfrey are at war. The Greek gods are the old gods, and the Dark Elite are the new gods from the planet Apocalypse. They are all gods, and although they have different strengths, the gap is not very big. Even some of the Dark Elite are even stronger than the old Protoss. Take Cantor, for example, as an assassin, he has already dealt fatal damage to Poseidon. Standing there, Cantor's expression was cold, and he swung his dagger again to finish off the target. But suddenly, an indistinguishable figure quickly rescued Poseidon from Cantor. That was Hermes, the envoy of God, one of the 12 main gods. Hermes is also the god of speed, and his ability is speed, which can reach the speed of light at the fastest. Unlike the Flash's speed force, Hermes' speed is Hermes' power. Including Shazam's spells, it is the power of Hermes that gives Shazam not weak Superman speed. Although the M in Shazam's spell is Mercury in Roman mythology, Mercury corresponds to Hermes. Hermes took the injured Poseidon away across the battlefield in an instant. Seawater, take me to the sea, Poseidon said with difficulty. As the god of the sea, he can only recover from his injuries when he returns to his own domain. But the 12 main gods are not complete, and some of the goddesses are not good at fighting at all. Once 2 more people are left, can the remaining people deal with the Dark Elite with 10 people? Even among the Dark Elite, there is the most dangerous Cantor. But now he can't take care of much. Not only has Poseidon lost his fighting power, but his life is also threatened. If it was delayed any longer, he would die. Hermes had no choice but to run towards the nearest ocean. At the speed of light, the distance from the sun to the earth is only 8 minutes. Not to mention running on the earth, it is enough to go around several times in 1 second. However, it may be accidental, it may be a coincidence, or it may be completely fate. Hermes happened to pass by a primeval forest, and there, Hermes also passed 2 people, a man and a woman. After Hermes looked back, he suddenly found that a man and a woman were looking at him curiously. They seemed to be able to see my speed. Hermes suddenly had an illusion that the other party seemed to be able to keep up with his speed. But how is this possible? Even among the 12 main gods, his speed is the fastest, even Zeus can't keep up. Just when Hermes felt unbelievable for his inexplicable feeling, suddenly, 2 golden lights followed. It was Lu Yuan and Alice. It turned out that Hermes passed by their house, and they, who were still watching, had already noticed the changes on the battlefield with their super farsightedness and super hearing. I have to say that the Dark Elites are indeed powerful, and as they join the battlefield, the 12 Master Shundu is in trouble. They caught up with Hermes at the moment. Alice is on the left and Lu Yuan is on the right, sandwiching Hermes and Poseidon in the middle. Is the battle difficult? Alice asked. Lu Yuan glanced at Poseidon and said, "Is this the sea god Poseidon?" He wasn't being sarcastic, he was just expressing his feelings. Hermes' tongue stopped in his tracks and exclaimed, "Who are you?" Lu Yuan and Alice also stopped one after another, looking back at Hermes who was behind them. Alice looked at Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan shrugged. It's just 2 ordinary people. What he didn't say was that they were Kryptonians, not Earthlings. At least Alice is still an ordinary Kryptonian. If anything, Kryptonians will become stronger as long as they are exposed to the sun, and she is just strengthening in the ordinary way of Kryptonians. It's just that this time is a little long. Ordinary people? Hermes didn't believe it at all. Whose ordinary people have you seen can keep up with the speed of light? At the same time, he also felt that there was no hostility between Lu Yuan and Alice. They also seemed to be paying attention to the situation on the battlefield. Hermes hesitated for a while, and then said, "If you are really Earthlings, I think you should also contribute your strength. We are in trouble, please help us." Alice continued to look at Lu Yuan. He was the head of the family, and she wanted him to call the shots. Do you want to get involved? Do you want to face Darkseid again? Do you want to help? She knew that Lu Yuan had been betrayed before, and that she was still the mother planet and compatriots she desperately tried to protect. So she left the decision to Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan definitely has his own considerations. After all, they are outsiders. They are aliens. After defeating Darkseid, what will the Earth think of them? After all, the Greek gods are still old gods, and they still have huge power, and it doesn't mean that they can be eliminated if they are eliminated. Even Zeus once achieved a record of almost killing Superman in seconds. He cannot be underestimated. Zeus is indeed worthy of being the king of gods in his strongest period. If it weren't for the Dark Elite's power, even Darkseid would be frustrated again on Earth, and the old gods would let him drink a pot. But now, Darkseid is no longer what it used to be, and has formed his own elite team. And even the army of demons has also stepped onto the stage. This guy just got tougher than ever. Lu Yuan, Alice said softly, calling her husband's name. If we want to stay here, we can't let Darkseid destroy this place. It's time to make a decision. They have been waiting and watching for a long time, and it is time to make a decision. Whether it is to help or leave here, she will support Lu Yuan unconditionally. Lu Yuan sighed lightly. I see, then let's go. Lu Yuan still didn't let go of the Earth. The former home planet Krypton betrayed him, but the Earth did not, and the Earth is also his home planet. How could he bear to see Darkseid destroy the Earth civilization with the power of the Mother Box? So after the two looked at each other, they turned into golden light and disappeared again. Hermes took a long breath, looked down at Poseidon and said, I didn't expect that there are two strong men hidden on the Earth. Poseidon was already extremely weak, but he still expressed his opinion. They should be the two on the sun. He was right. 27. Not to mention that Hermes quickly took Poseidon to the sea to heal Poseidon. On the other side, the battlefield. With the departure of the 12 main gods, the pressure on the Earth Alliance side suddenly increased a lot. Of the 12 main gods, only Zeus, Hades, Ares, Apollo, Artemis, Athena, and Hephaestus remained. There are only 7 left, and the Dark Elite still maintains a complete lineup of 10 people. In addition to the Mantis, Cantor, Mortera, Titan, Dr. Chaos, Amazing Grace, and Glory Godfrey, who have already shot, Apocalypse, Brora, and D. Warrens have also joined the battlefield. Every Dark Elite is extremely powerful, and they are the best selected from countless new Protoss. So while the other 12 Lord Gods are held back by the Dark Elites, the remaining ones are doing terrible damage to the Earth Alliance. Even powerful Amazon female warriors, even Atlanteans whose physique is far from that of a Superman, even fully armed human warriors, are all easily killed by them in seconds. Even Green Lantern Urango at the moment is powerless. He is already fighting with all his strength, but it is still extremely difficult for him to face a Dark Elite. Even Brora and T. Warrens are eyeing Urango. Brora's hands and body were covered with a layer of rock-like substance, which gave him a terrible defensive power. After he forcibly resisted a hammer blow from Urango, a cold smile appeared on his face. Before Urango could retreat, D. Warrens quietly appeared behind him. One hand pressed Urango's shoulder, and a small knife appeared in the other hand. Even among the Dark Elites, D. Warrens is extremely special. Not only is he powerful, he is also Darkseid's chief torture expert, and his favorite thing to do is to torture the enemy. He didn't intend to kill Urango directly, but cut Urango's wrist with a knife. Urango let out a cry of pain, and one hand was cut off abruptly. Even that was his hand with the green light ring on. Green Lantern's power comes entirely from the Green Lantern ring. Once the ring is taken off, many Green Lanterns are just ordinary people. The same was true for Urango. When the hand wearing the green light ring fell off, he secretly said that it was not good, and was about to call for the ring to be put on the other hand. But it was already too late. D. Warrens was about to slit Urango's throat with the knife. Urango has closed his eyes. He is not afraid of death. He has the will to face death. But at this moment, a golden light broke into the battlefield and came behind D. Warrens. Hey! Alice came to D. Warrens, with a head of brilliant blonde hair floating behind her. Although she came in a hurry, she was not embarrassed at all, but exuded a strange beauty. Alice, like at the moment's D. Warrens, is good at tapping his back. D. Warrens turned his head subconsciously, only to see a small white fist coming towards him. It was too late to dodge anymore, and with a bang, Alice punched D. Warrens in the face. D. Warrens raised his head, but he didn't fly out because Alice was holding his shoulder tightly. Not giving D. Warrens a chance at all, Alice grabbed him tightly and raised her fist again. Bang, 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 bang. There was a terrifying sound coming from D. Warrens. Even though Alice is beautiful and cute, her little fists are deadly, and she has always hit D. Warrens' face. Ordinary people would have been blown away. Head off. Even so, D. Warrens was in a trance for a while, and must have had a concussion. This is all due to his terrible physique as a new Protoss, otherwise he would not be able to hold on. This sudden change made many people unresponsive. Even Brora was bewildered, and only then remembered to help. However, when Alice turned her head, her beautiful eyes lit up quickly, and two bright golden heat rays were fired in the next second. In fact, Superman's heat ray should be red, blue at most. For some unknown reason, the heat rays of Lu Yuan and Alice turned golden. Maybe it's because they stayed in the core of the sun for 100,000 years. After all, the original heat ray of Lu Yuan was also red. It didn't change at first, and it turned golden after that. Two deadly heat rays directly suppressed Brora from top to bottom, and even the terrifying heat rays were still disintegrating and melting the terrible rocky substance on Brora's body. Do not. Brora let out a painful cry. His life form is very special. He thought that his defense should be the highest, but today he encountered a fatal threat. Regardless, Alice continued to output heat ray while staring at her eyes, and her hand didn't even stop. Her left hand hooked de Warren's neck, and her other hand went around to grab his chin. It looked like she was hugging de Warren's tenderly, but the next second, she squeezed her hands hard. Click. De Warren's head turned around quickly, and there was a frightening sound from his neck. Alice is not a weak girl. She used to be a vigorous female general, and even executed many enemies herself. At the moment, she abruptly twisted de Warren's neck, and at the same time, the heat ray from her eyes finally completely melted Brora's body on the ground. In an instant, Alice, who had debuted for the first time, quickly and neatly resolved the two enemies. They were two Dark Elites, and they were the most powerful new Protoss fighters under Darkseid. As a result, she casually killed two of them. Even Darkseid couldn't calm down anymore. He put his hands down from his back, first glanced at Alice thoughtfully, as if thinking of something. His expression gradually turned cold. The next second, from his there were also two terrifying rays of light in his eyes. That was his Omega Ray, which he managed to find out in the past 100,000 years. At the moment quickly crossed arcs and direction changes one after another on the battlefield, and arrived in front of Alice in an instant. Alice was startled. She wasn't prepared for this. However, she is not afraid at all, because she has someone she can trust who will never let her down. Shwa. Another golden light flashed, and Lu Yuan appeared. He stood in front of Alice, and his eyes also released golden heat rays, which happened to meet Darkseid's Omega rays. The two sides are competing with each other, and the two rays are also canceling each other out, as if they are evenly matched. Darkseid frowned and shouted angrily, "Who are you? What's your relationship with that guy? Say, are you from Krypton?" Faced with Darkseid's questioning, Lu Yuan smiled, and with a thought, his body began to change. In the next second, he turned into Doomsday and appeared in front of Darkseid. "Are you asking me?" 28. Darkseid didn't know that Lu Yuan was the Doomsday he had been thinking about all along. But when Lu Yuan showed his real body, he finally knew who he was in front of. "It's you." Darkseid was surprised and angry. What surprised him was that he met this powerful enemy from the beginning again. What made him angry was that he wanted to stop him again. Without half a hesitation, Darkseid continued to release Omega rays to confront Lu Yuan's heat ray with his eyes, and he himself rose into the air and rushed straight to Lu Yuan. In fact, there is one thing that makes people quite strange. As the Dark Lord, Darkseid, as a new Protoss, he is extremely powerful, and he seems to be unable to fly before. Even in the comics he can't fly at one point. But after gaining the power of Omega rays, he can finally fly. Like a couple who haven't seen each other for a long time, Darkseid couldn't wait to fly to Lu Yuan. "I want to get back all the insults you gave me in the past." Darkseid stared at Lu Yuan and opened his hands to attack. However, even in front of Darkseid, Lu Yuan, who had already transformed into the form of the Doomsday, did not lose the wind at all, and his momentum was even higher. Lu Yuan sneered and kicked him first. Boom. Caught off guard, Darkseid immediately flew back the same way. There was an expression of disbelief on Darkseid's face. He didn't believe it. He couldn't accept it. Obviously, he had obtained the power of the Omega effect and became stronger than before. But why is he still not his opponent? Darkseid definitely didn't know that when he was looking for the Omega effect and the anti-life equation, Lu Yuan was not idle either. Lu Yuan is also strengthening, and his strength growth rate is even far beyond Darkseid's imagination. In the past, neither of them grew up, and they were evenly matched at that time. Lu Yuan finally defeated Darkseid, relying on his endless physical strength. But it's different now. Lu Yuan has become stronger than Darkseid. "Do you think my heat ray really can't defeat your Omega ray?" Lu Yuan suddenly put away his heat ray and swiped his terrifying big claw, smashing the Omega ray abruptly. "Actually not. Lu Yuan explained. It's because the power of our heat ray is related to temperature, but if we use a heat ray that exceeds 20,000 degrees, the Earth will be destroyed first. It turned out that Lu Yuan and Alice didn't use their full power of heat ray. Otherwise, everything on the surface of the Earth would be roasted by the terrible temperature, including everyone on the battlefield would die. Unless you can survive in the core of the sun, who can withstand the temperature of 20,000 degrees Celsius. Even if it's just for a moment, the terrifying high temperature will destroy everything here. So Lu Yuan and Alice had reservations. He even shattered the Omega rays with his physical body. Lu Yuan looked down at the palm of his hand and nodded secretly in his heart. Sure enough, Omega rays cannot kill Doomsday me. In fact, in the comics, there was a battle between Doomsday and Darkseid, and the result was that Darkseid's Omega rays could not kill Doomsday, but made Doomsday immune to the power of Omega rays. In the end, Darkseid was beaten by the Doomsday and had to ask his enemy Superman for help. This drives Doomsday away from Apocalypse, otherwise Doomsday will destroy Apocalypse. And now, when Lu Yuan became the Doomsday, he also gave Darkseid a setback. Don't let him slow down, Alice reminded from behind. Lu Yuan nodded to show his understanding, then turned his head to look at his lover with worried eyes. Alice raised her fist. I'm no worse than you now. As she said that, she turned around and turned into a golden light again, and quickly flew to other battlefields. Along the way, Alice turned on Heat Ray again and easily killed the army of demons in seconds, and even went straight to one of the Dark Elites. There were 10 people before the Dark Elite, 2 died and 8 remained. But there were only 7 of the 12 main gods present, which meant that there was a Dark Elite who was killing people like he was in no man's land. Alice was running for him. Apocalypse Disaster Star, without his original name, was once just a servant. After he was developed by Darkseid and became a member of the Dark Elite, he swore allegiance to Darkseid to the death. He did the same, trying his best to remove all obstacles for Darkseid. But at this moment, a beautiful girl suddenly appeared in front of him and blocked his way. Alice looked at the man in front of her with a smile, raised her hand and hooked her fingers. I'll play with you. Not mentioning Alice's battle on the other side, Lu Yuan withdrew his worried gaze. He knew very well that Alice's strength was even worse than his own, but Alice had already reached the 5th dimension, which can be said to be the limit of a Superman ever. So far, the highest level that Superman can reach by himself is Jean Chao. Thinking Superman is not counted, it is a robot. The full name should be Thinking Machine Superman, and 2 or more Superman have to work together to control it. In addition, even the strongest Silver Superman has been teased by troublemakers in the 5th dimension. At least Silver Superman has never reached the 5th dimension. Only one Superman has reached the 5th dimension, and that is Jean Chao. And now, Alice and he are both 5th dimensional. So what's there to worry about? Thinking about it, Lu Yuan felt relieved. There was only one target in front of him, and that was Darkseid. And when flying to Darkseid, Lu Yuan also solved the 3 identical triplets passing by. Those 3 guys are mainly responsible for the trinity of the 3 mother boxes. Once the 3 mother boxes are integrated, the entire Earth will perish. Lu Yuan came at the right time. At the moment when the 3 mother boxes were about to be united, he slapped a child neatly, destroying the triplets again. Last time he only killed one, but this time, he killed all 3. Then Lu Yuan turned his head and looked at the mother box in front of him. With a huge golden body, he had turned into a golden Doomsday, with fierce and undisguised malicious eyes and a bloody mouth. Okay. Lu Yuan snorted softly. It was just a soft snort, but the mother box seemed to be under great pressure, and even trembled like a living thing, and finally dispersed automatically, turning into 3 mother boxes again to escape in 3 directions. Stop it for me, Lu Yuan yelled again, forcefully causing the 3 mother boxes to fall down, and fell into complete silence. Then, Lu Yuan continued to walk towards Darkseid. Darkseid had already got up and stood there watching Lu Yuan come to him. He didn't run away. This time he didn't run away again. 2 identical behemoths, 2 monster-level powerhouses in the eyes of others, faced each other at the moment. They are very clear in their hearts that this time they will not die. 29. Why don't you see your Uncle Steppenwolf? Lu Yuan was not in a hurry to split up with Darkseid immediately, but raised his inner curiosity. Darkseid narrowed his eyes slightly, hiding a flash of anger. But he didn't avoid Lu Yuan's curiosity, but answered directly. You once gave me a shame, making him mistakenly think that I was not enough to scare people. So he betrayed me after returning to Apocalypse. However, Darkseid's horror is absolute. Darkseid is not offensive, and Darkseid will never allow anyone to betray, kill. The more Darkseid spoke, the louder he was, and finally he shouted it out. If it was someone else, even the new Protoss would be terrified. But Lu Yuan didn't take it seriously at all. He just stood there, looking at Darkseid indifferently until he made an attack. Then with a sound of, Lu Yuan suddenly disappeared. Even Darkseid lost sight of Lu Yuan. Could it be that he ran away? Darkseid had to think so. But the next second, Lu Yuan appeared behind Darkseid and knocked him away with a punch. It's high-speed action. When my whole body starts to vibrate at high speed, it seems to disappear. Unless there is someone with the same speed as me, Lu Yuan explained. Speaking of it, this is a trick, but it is to exert the speed to the whole body, and then let the whole body vibrate at high speed. At the level of the speed of light, it is difficult for people who cannot reach the speed of light to find Lu Yuan's figure, which is similar and invisible. And when he was in such a state, even his thinking became faster, as if everything around him slowed down. Definitely Lu Yuan's purpose is more than that. In fact, speed can be turned into strength. When the speed is fast enough, even a small bird can smash through the armor of the aircraft. Under the power of full speed, Lu Yuan's punch just now was no less than a planet, and with his original strength, it all leaned on Darkseid's body, making him almost blown away. Even so, all the armor that Darkseid wore on his body was shattered this time. This is still the power that he already has, the Omega effect. If it was him 100,000 years ago, he would have been beaten to death by Lu Yuan's punch. Darkseid got up from the ground in embarrassment and turned his head to find Lu Yuan's whereabouts. A gust of wind blew by, and Lu Yuan had already come behind him. Darkseid was shocked all over, with a certain understanding expression on his face. The next moment, Lu Yuan stretched out his big hand and grabbed Darkseid, forcefully lifting him from the ground. This scene was extremely shocking, because it was Darkseid, and anyone who knew his identity knew how high his status was. However, in fact, Doomsday did deal a fatal blow to Darkseid in the comics, although later with the appearance of Darkseid's ontological setting, that Darkseid was considered the weakest duplication. But it cannot be denied that Doomsday beat Darkseid to the ground, and forced Darkseid to find his former opponent Superman to help him, otherwise Darkseid would not be able to protect his Apocalypse Star. And at this moment, he was powerless to fight back, and was brought up by Lu Yuan in a very humiliating way. The two faced each other again. Compared with before, after 100,000 years of precipitation, Darkseid is far from Lu Yuan's opponent. It has to be said that the setting of Kryptonians is too bug. As long as they absorb the sun's rays without limit, it's just basking in the sun, and they can become infinitely stronger. The current Lu Yuan and Alice have already broken through the sky. They are no longer the level and realm that Darkseid could have imagined. To put it a bit more troublesome, the new Protoss is comparable to the old Protoss, and there are not many of the old Protoss who can say that they are sure to win Superman. But even Superman has nothing to do with the troublemakers in the fifth dimension. If the troublemakers want to, they can make Superman's ability disappear at any time. And now, Lu Yuan and Alice are also the fifth dimension, which has even surpassed the level of the ordinary fifth dimension. Darkseid's loss was not unjust, and Lu Yuan was the Day of Doom, who happened to be his nemesis. I let you go the first time, but you never changed your mind, and let me meet you here again. This is the choice of fate, and it is also the day of your end, Lu Yuan said calmly to Darkseid. Announced. Darkseid did not beg for mercy, but turned to look at the three quiet mother boxes. In fact, he has discovered that the power he has been looking for recently is hidden on this planet, the anti-life equation. Somehow, the anti-life equation is actually on the Earth? It is clearly the last moment. Once the three bodies of the mother box are unified, even if Lu Yuan comes, it will be too late. Not only can he turn all the people on the Earth into his army of demons, even those old gods will also perish. He can even dig out the anti-life equation for his own use, but now it's useless to say anything. He did all the calculations but never thought. Why is Lu Yuan here? How did he know that Lu Yuan used to be a native of Earth, and he came to the core of the sun for 100,000 years to save Alice? Lu Yuan came earlier than Darkseid. Could it really be fate? I'll give you a ride. Lu Yuan had no intention of humiliating Darkseid, but decisively raised his elbow to face him with that terrible bone spur. Generally, the terrible bone spurs of Doomsday can easily cut through Superman's steel body, not to mention Lu Yuan's bone spurs. The golden bone spurs are like golden armor, with a cold light shining at the tip, stronger than many magical weapons sharp. Accompanied by Lu Yuan swiping his elbow. Puff. Darkseid's body was powerless and fell to the ground, while his head was still held in Lu Yuan's hands. This is the highest respect for an enemy. It's just that for some reason, after Darkseid died, no blood flowed out. Not a drop of blood at all, just dead. Darkseid was indeed dead, but his death was too peaceful. With Darkseid's status in the DC universe, it shouldn't be like this, and his death will definitely cause a terrible phenomenon. But no, nothing happened. It was as peaceful as if an ordinary person died. Lu Yuan didn't know this and thought it was normal. However, when the real Darkseid died, he once erupted with a terrifying godhead that could destroy the entire multi-universe, but now he has not appeared at all. Lu Yuan didn't know that Darkseid had been introduced into the concept of ontology and duplication. Except for the ontology, there are duplications of Darkseid in every universe. And this is obviously not the ontology. Lu Yuan let go of his hand, allowing Darkseid's head to fall freely. Turning around, he looked at the Dark Elites. 30. The war is not over yet, but when Darkseid was finally killed by Lu Yuan, the result has actually been announced. Just because the war is still going on, the situation here between Lu Yuan and Darkseid has not been noticed by the Dark Elites, especially after Alice joined the battlefield. After beheading 2 Dark Elites one after another, she continued to break into other battlefields. After killing the demon-like army all the way, she came in front of Athena and Titan. Both Athena and Titan had noticed Alice's arrival, and they both put on guard. Alice and Lu Yuan are strangers after all. Alice glanced at Athena and nodded to the latter. "I'm here to help." The Titan snorted softly, brandished the scorching scepter, and released a terrifying scorching heat ray. "Be careful," Athena called out. Alice showed a disdainful expression, opened her mouth to exhale, and sprayed out a piece of white freezing air visible to the naked eye, which not only offset the scorching heat ray, but even quickly spread in front of the Titan. Titan was surprised to find that the scorching scepter in his hand was frozen, and even his arm was touched by the terrible cold breath, and he threw the scepter out of his hand instantly like an electric shock. Wow! When the scorching scepter fell to the ground, it shattered into pieces all over the ground. Alice was so unreasonable. Her eyes began to light up and she shouted, "You also try my heat ray." She fired 2 terrifying heat rays at the Titan, who was caught off guard and flew upside down, falling there. And Alice didn't stop yet, but continued to aim the terrifying heat ray at the Titan, and gradually began to increase its power. As Alice's heat ray gradually heated up, the surrounding temperature also increased rapidly, and when the temperature began to reach several hundred degrees Celsius, the Titan's defense finally collapsed. Just when Athena couldn't bear the heat wave and retreated, Titan finally let out a cry of grief, and Alice forcefully melted a big hole in his chest. The power of the heat ray is anything but simple. It is one of Superman's most powerful attacks. It's just that heat ray will also affect the environment of the Earth, so it can't be used casually. Alice also put it away immediately after killing the Titan. If it continues, the entire battlefield will be affected, and even global warming will be affected. "Who the hell are you guys?" Athena then approached Alice again and asked her in Lu Yuan's background. Alice looked up for Lu Yuan and found that he had already defeated Darkseid, and at the moment was flying towards her. She knew that Lu Yuan was worried about herself and shook her head at him dumbfounded. She had already defeated 3 powerful enemies when Lu Yuan was dealing with Darkseid, more than his record. Seeing that Lu Yuan changed direction halfway and was approached by a Dark Elite, Alice looked at Athena again. "I told you, we are here to help." "I'm asking, who are you?" Athena still did not relax her vigilance. "You are such a brainless person. You can accept Green Lantern's help, but you can't accept us?" Alice was too lazy to entangle with her and flew away rolling her eyes. Athena was not very happy. This was the first time she was evaluated like this. Before, she was called the goddess of wisdom and was praised for her beauty, but no one said she was stupid. But she also has to admit that Lu Yuan and Alice are indeed powerful, and their arrival has also made the battle situation clearer. Even the assassin who mortally wounded Poseidon was now stopped by that man. Cantor, a member of the Dark Elite, is confronting Lu Yuan at the moment. After Cantor made Poseidon have to withdraw, he once wanted to unite with other Dark Elites to quickly defeat those old gods. But he suddenly discovered a terrible fact, that is, Darkseid, their Dark Lord, has been defeated, even killed. Cantor subconsciously glanced at the distance. Darkseid's body was still lying there, already dead. Even his head fell off. It was done by the terrifying monster in front of him. Cantor's expression was calm, but his eyes showed uncontrollable murderous intent, and a bright red murderous intent visible to the naked eye also emerged from his body. He wants to avenge his lord. Kill. Gritting his teeth, Cantor instantly appeared behind Lu Yuan, holding that dreadful dagger that could hurt even the old Protoss, and stabbed at Lu Yuan's heart. He hadn't killed Poseidon with a single blow before, as if he was playing with his prey. But when dealing with Lu Yuan, he only had endless killing intent. However, he ignored that Lu Yuan's body was covered with a layer of bone armor, and the knife was easily bounced off by Lu Yuan's bone armor without leaving even a trace. At the moment, Lu Yuan still maintains the form of Doomsday, not because he likes this ugly and scary look, but because he likes the violent aesthetics of Doomsday. Turning around slowly, Lu Yuan faced Cantor's direction. Just because you want to hurt me? Even Darkseid is not my opponent. Don't get too complacent, Lu Yuan shouted angrily, opened his terrifying big hand, and slammed it hard. Even with Cantor's strength, he couldn't react. He only had time to raise his arm subconsciously, and then he was completely slapped on the ground. For Cantor, Lu Yuan's blow was no less than that of an ordinary person being hit by a truck. The arm he raised to parry just now was unconscious. He didn't even have time to react to the pain, and the arm disappeared completely. It wasn't smashed or shattered, but it disappeared completely, as if entering a different dimensional world. That's because the power it touched was too powerful, and the destructive power generated in an instant was enough to shatter that space. And Cantor's arm was also completely vaporized. Cantor finally knew why their monarch, Darkseid, lost. The enemy in front of them was too terrifying, and they were definitely not something they could fight against. But he had no chance to get up. Lu Yuan's huge body walked in front of him. Lu Yuan looked down at Cantor with a cold expression, slowly raised his right hand and clenched it into a fist, and then lowered it down hard without saying a word. Boom. The whole earth trembled, and the entire battlefield was affected. Everyone subconsciously looked in that direction. Lu Yuan's already huge body, at the moment, is more like standing on top of the sky. Both the enemy and us feel the pressure of Mount Tai. What kind of monster is that? This is the voice of everyone, even the demon-like legion, which claims to be fearless of life and death, hesitated and screamed after seeing Darkseid's body. Lu Yuan raised his head slowly and declared loudly, "No one can escape." 31. Lu Yuan's announcement determined the outcome of the Darkseid Legion. Especially when everyone noticed Darkseid's dead appearance, Darkseid's subordinates all panicked. Even the demon-like legion, which is known as fearless of life and death, flew up to escape from this dangerous world while screaming. However, a terrifying heat ray flew across the sky in an instant, and all the monsters that were swept away disappeared without a sound. It was Lu Yuan's heat ray, just swiping it from left to right. It easily wiped out countless monsters, and all the monsters on that parallel line were reduced to ashes. The rest of the demons were too afraid to fly high. They flapped their wings and stayed in the air at a loss. Even those dark elites stopped, staring blankly at the place where Darkseid fell. Their monarch, Darkseid, is actually dead? That guy? Revenge for Darkseid. The dark elites shouted and took action one after another. Except for Brora and T-Warrens, who were killed by Alice successively, and the Apocalypse Disaster Star, who was killed before helping Athena kill the Titans, plus Cantor, who was killed by Lu Yuan. The remaining 5 people all died. Coming. Mantis, Amazing Grace, and Godfrey the Glory, plus Dr. Chaos and Mortera. 5 people surrounded Lu Yuan. In the distance, the Earth Alliance army saw this scene, and some people were about to take action. However, the 12 main gods looked at each other in blank dismay. Zeus frowned deeply, staring closely at Lu Yuan's terrifying body and the pressure it brought. "We must not let them hurt our allies," said Green Lantern. Orango had already got the ring back, but he didn't have time to repair the broken arm now, so he could only wear it on the other hand. But no matter what, he still regained his fighting power. Orango shouted, turned into a green light, and rushed over. But he immediately discovered that there was no Earth Coalition army behind him. What's wrong? Orango turned his head belatedly and looked at those allies in confusion. But Lu Yuan sees it more thoroughly than him. For the Earth Alliance, he and Darkseid are the same. They are all aliens. Alice turned into a golden light and flew from a distance. When passing by Orango, she smiled sweetly at him. "It's okay. It's a small problem." Saying that, Alice fluttered to Lu Yuan's side and looked at Lu Yuan worriedly. "Are you all right?" Alice asked. She was worried about Lu Yuan's feelings. He had been betrayed by Krypton once, and he had already been betrayed by his mother planet once. Would he have to experience it again now? During the time they lived together, Lu Yuan once confessed to Alice that he was a soul who traveled from the Earth. Initially, Alice was definitely not acceptable, but Lu Yuan had a kind of understanding and explained to Alice that he did not replace Lu Yuan Al, nor was Lu Yuan Al resurrected. Actually, Lu Yuan is Lu Yuan Al. To make it more complicated, Lu Yuan Al is Lu Yuan's identity in the DC world, and they are the same person. It can also be considered that Lu Yuan Al's previous life was Lu Yuan, and they are the same person. It's just that for some reason Lu Yuan was not born as Lu Yuan Al after time travel, but integrated with Lu Yuan Al. No wonder Lu Yuan's feelings for Alice are so easy to accept, because Alice's childhood sweetheart has always been him, and he has always been Lu Yuan. So Alice already knew that Lu Yuan was a human from Earth, so now he is going to be betrayed by his home planet for the second time? As a result, Lu Yuan shook his head but said he didn't care. It's not the same breed anyway. I have yellow skin. Didn't you notice the difference in skin color? We didn't like to see each other. He didn't bother to care about those white-skinned guys. Not only are there different races, different positions, and different camps, but the Earth itself is still in a mess at this time. The Amazons and Atlanteans may have been at war not so long ago, including between human nations. So there is nothing to betray or not to betray. Since I decided to act, I didn't think about getting anyone's approval. I just acted according to my own will. Lu Yuan had already realized this. Only then did Alice feel relieved. That's good. I was worried that you would turn around and kill them. Lu Yuan rolled his eyes. Is he that scary? He's not a villain. If Alice didn't wake up, he wouldn't mind destroying the entire universe to be buried with her. But now, he just wanted to be by Alice's side, that's all. Then get rid of them as soon as possible, and then I'll take you around the universe. Lu Yuan refocused on the surrounding dark elites. Alice shrugged, turned around and leaned against Lu Yuan's back and praised. They didn't interrupt us. They really have quality. Lu Yuan reminded. It's not that they didn't interrupt. Didn't you realize that I stopped the time just now? It turned out that in order not to be disturbed by others, he quietly stopped the time. No wonder the dark elites didn't make a move. But now, with the reflow of time, the dark elites made a decisive move. First of all, Mantis, as a strong man in the dark elite who is second only to Darkseid, his strength is undoubtedly powerful. Even the Mantis claims to have a defense that is immune to all physics, energy, and magic. Even Ares, the god of war, has no way to deal with the Mantis after absorbing the power of such a large-scale war. And at the moment, he was the first to rush towards Lu Yuan, slashing at Lu Yuan's neck with a pair of knives head-on. He said that he wanted to avenge Darkseid, and it seemed that he wanted Lu Yuan to end up in the same fate as Darkseid. However, what he faced was Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan even defeated Darkseid, let alone Mantis who was weaker than Darkseid. Lu Yuan didn't dodge, he just stood there, and let the Mantis hands cut on both sides of his neck. However, Mantis's hand knife, which is no less than a real magic weapon, didn't even scratch a layer of his skin. Lu Yuan raised his eyelids, looked at the surprised Mantis in front of him, and sneered, "That's it?" Not giving Mantis a chance to retreat, Lu Yuan waved his big hand and slapped it. Boom. The praying Mantis flew out like a real insect being hit by a fly swatter. And in the middle of the sky, the praying Mantis also spurted out big mouthfuls of blood. He was injured, and he, who claimed to be immune to physical attacks, was seriously injured. Immune to all attacks? Nonsense. When the force you bear exceeds your limit, you will also be injured, Lu Yuan sneered. If Mantis is really so invincible, how can he be weaker than Darkseid? In fact, the so-called immunity is simply impossible. Even Lu Yuan, as Doomsday, cannot be truly immune. It's just that Doomsday will come back from the dead and evolve to be immune to the last attack. It is impossible for a Mantis to be immune to all attacks for no reason. His defense power is far superior to that of ordinary people, but he also has his limit. But Lu Yuan easily surpassed that limit with just one slap, and made Mantis seriously injured and fell to the ground with just one face-to-face encounter. P.S. I sent out the contract in the afternoon, and I'm going to see the results after it's put on the shelves. I've written several Marvel and DC books. I'm sure the story behind will be even more exciting. Please support me. 32. When Lu Yuan slapped the praying Mantis, which claimed to be immune to almost all attacks, and was seriously injured and vomited blood, the other Dark Elites were shocked. But they still attacked. They were not easily defeated, and still retained their belief in avenging Darkseid. They did that too. But when they rushed straight to Lu Yuan, they were blocked by a beautiful figure. Don't underestimate Alice. Although she is a woman, she was also a female general in Lu Yuan's former guard. Her combat power was once stronger than Lu Yuan's. A man who wants to hurt me? Have you asked me? Alice yelled fiercely and rushed forward. Even if she was facing 4 enemies, she was still not afraid. She was by no means the kind of little girl who would hide behind Lu Yuan, but a powerful female warrior who stepped forward to protect Lu Yuan's back. In an instant, Alice took the initiative to break into the enemy's encirclement, but in this way, she rescued Lu Yuan. The Dark Elites can't surround Lu Yuan if they surround her, which allows Lu Yuan to catch up with Mantis and stand condescendingly in front of Mantis just like he did against Cantor before. Mantis was struggling to get up, which made him look like he was kneeling down to Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan didn't care if he meant it or not, and he didn't bother to take advantage of it. Taking a step forward, Lu Yuan pressed the Mantis head with his left hand. Mantis wanted to struggle, but Lu Yuan's power was not something he could resist. Mantis even had the illusion that even Darkseid had never given him such a powerless and hopeless feeling. The strength of Mantis is second only to Darkseid, so he is one of the few people who can compete with Darkseid without being instantly killed. But not even Darkseid can make Mantis despair, although he does respect and fear Darkseid. Only Lu Yuan, only when he faced the monster in front of him, felt the real irresistible force for the first time. The Mantis wanted to raise its head, but Lu Yuan didn't allow it, so it could only look down at Lu Yuan's scary big feet feebly, and only one foot could be seen. Suddenly, Mantis had a realization that he could only stop here. Slowly, Mantis closed his eyes. The next moment, Lu Yuan, who had already raised his fist high, smashed it down with all his strength. Boom. The earth trembled again, worse than the previous one. Even the 12 gods and the Earth Alliance army who were watching the show were shocked, because they guessed a terrible thing. His physical strength doesn't seem to be weakened at all? No, even his strength has become stronger. Ares stared at Lu Yuan's back, even as a god of war, at the moment would never want to challenge such a monster. Someone also approached Arango and asked in a low voice, "Friends in green, do you know where they come from?" Arango secretly asked about the Green Lantern ring, but was told, "According to the records of a certain Green Lantern in the 2813 sector, I once encountered a monster that escaped from Krypton, which is said to be called Doomsday." Later, Doomsday was used by other the solar system sent to Sector 2814 should be him. Doomsday. The name was finally heard on Earth. It's him. The 12 main gods exchanged glances with each other. 100,000 years ago, it was Helios, the previous sun god, who contacted Lu Yuan. It's just that Helios probably didn't want people to know that he was a little guilty at the time, so he didn't record the things about Lu Yuan in too much detail, and let the Greek gods know nothing about this person under his nose. If it hadn't been for such a big war that broke out suddenly today, Lu Yuan and Alice would still be living their happy life, hiding in the deep mountains and old forests. Not to mention these spectators. On the other side, Lu Yuan's shots were crisp and sharp, when he killed Darkseid, when he killed Cantor, and now when he killed Mantis. The praying Mantis was dead, and when Lu Yuan raised his fist, there was nothing left in front of him, only a terrifying deep pit with cracks spreading around it, like a spider's web. He nearly smashed the earth into pieces. Turning his head, Lu Yuan looked towards Alice, and this look made his eyes tear up. I saw that Alice is now surrounded by 4 Dark Elites, the Magical Grace and the Glorious Godfrey, needless to say, as well as Dr. Chaos and Mortera. The Magical Grace and the Glorious Godfrey's ability are masters of manipulation. They can distort the will of others, making those who are not as powerful as them forget who they used to be and be brainwashed to serve Darkseid unconsciously. Mortera needs no introduction. One hand can put a person to sleep and the other hand can make a person die. There is also Dr. Chaos, who has a magical power that does not know whether it is psychokinesis or another super ability. At the moment, they are working together to control Alice. Alice is powerful, but after all, she has to face 4 powerful enemies at the same time. The Dark Elite is also not to be underestimated. I saw that Dr. Chaos was doing his best to control Alice's actions with a kind of energy, and the Magical Grace and Glory Godfrey were also doing their best to control Alice's will. There is also Mortera, who is touching Alice with 2 terrifying auras at the same time, either to make her fall into a deep sleep so that the Control Master can control it, or to let her die. Seeing that Alice is in trouble here, although she is struggling hard, it also caused a lot of trouble for the 4 Dark Elites, almost out of control. At this time, Lu Yuan came, and only took 1 step to get behind Dr. Chaos, patted his shoulder with one hand, and asked, "Hey, what are you doing to other people's wives?" His tone was flat, and his expression was expressionless. But Alice knew that this was Lu Yuan's most angry performance. The more expressive he is, for example, he seems to be furious. The more he doesn't take it to heart, otherwise he would never show it so easily. It's just that the more calm he is, the more it shows that he has everything in mind. But Lu Yuan is extremely cautious about some things. The gang is done. Alice knew that she didn't need to do anything herself, so she simply gave up resistance. Now that he's here, she can do nothing. Dr. Chaos turned his head subconsciously, but before he could see Lu Yuan behind him clearly, he felt that he didn't know anything when his consciousness was gone, as if his consciousness had flown away. In fact, it was not an illusion, but his consciousness, head, really flew away, and was slapped away by Lu Yuan. Leaving the headless corpse on the ground, Lu Yuan looked at Tyla beside him. The latter had already reacted, and in a flash, two groups of terrifying auras enveloped Lu Yuan's body. When he saw that Lu Yuan had accidentally hit his trick, Tyla sneered and said, "It's nothing more than that." "Indeed. But that's all." 33. Mortera has a powerful ability. His left hand can make people fall asleep, and his right hand can make people die. However, when his two powers all hit Lu Yuan and wrapped him up, an accident happened. Lu Yuan yawned, opened his mouth wide, and directly swallowed the two breaths of Tyla. "That's it." Lu Yuan looked at Tyla indifferently. The latter was already at a loss, and looked at Lu Yuan stupidly. Why did this happen? Why didn't his ability take effect? Only Lu Yuan knew that the effect had already taken place. In fact, Mortera's ability still had an effect on Lu Yuan, and he even died once. It's just that Mortera doesn't know that Lu Yuan, who is Doomsday, is immortal, and after he was inexplicably killed once by Mortera's special ability, Lu Yuan became immune to Mortera's power. Lu Yuan frowned secretly. He thought that he could even resist the Omega Rays, and he didn't care about Mortera's power. But in fact, he did die once inexplicably. Although it will be resurrected immediately, and it will not be affected at all, there are infinite resurrections. But Lu Yuan secretly became vigilant in his heart. Although he could not die, he couldn't die, right? What if an accident happens and someone takes the opportunity to seal it up? It seems that he should be more careful in the future. Thinking, Lu Yuan glared at Tyla. He reminded himself, but also killed himself once. Damn it. Shwa. Lu Yuan turned into a blurry phantom and came in front of Tyla in an instant. The latter didn't react at all, and was pinched by Lu Yuan. As Lu Yuan retracted his palm, Tyla couldn't help but let out a scream. Even his bones were screaming, or the kind that was screaming all over his body. It sounded frightening. Amazing Grace and Glory Godfrey looked at each other. At the moment, there are only two of them left who can help Mortera, and all the Dark Elites are almost wiped out. Only they are still intact, but they didn't make a move to rescue Mortera. In fact, they had already seen the situation in front of them clearly. Darkseid is dead, Cantor is dead as an assassin, and even Mantis, who is known as the strongest among them, is also dead. Dead, dead, all dead. It was clear that the situation was good before, but when this monster and that woman joined, their side fell to one side, and they were wiped out by a shattered group. How dare the magical Grace and the glorious Godfrey continue? Rescuing Mortera is a long-term plan? Don't be kidding, they are not opponents together. Even if he is rescued, what's the use of a disabled guy? It was meaningless. After Darkseid died, they should have known that it was all meaningless, and they should have escaped immediately. It's not too late, Grace, let's go, Glorious Godfrey yelled, pulled his sister and jumped up, and a certain spaceship that was about to fly into the sky escaped from this extremely terrifying planet. However, Alice stood in front of the two of them. It's too late, Alice said to the two with a smile. It's already too late since you chose to surround us instead of escaping immediately. Besides, even if you choose to escape immediately, you still won't be able to escape of. Facing Alice, who blocked his only way to survive, the magical Grace and the glorious Godfrey did not hesitate to launch an attack together, trying to repel Alice and get a chance to escape. And they have already realized that their power cannot control Alice's will in a short period of time. In fact, in the comics, Darkseid hit the idea of the female Superman Kayla more than once, and he did fool Kayla. But Alice is not Kayla. Although she is also a female Superman, she is much better than Kayla. So the power of miraculous Grace and Glory Godfrey has no effect on her, at least not for a short time. This made the two brothers and sisters helpless and could only attack with brute force. They are the new Protoss, and they are still the best among them, and they are also members of the Dark Elite. Their powerful bodies are comparable to ordinary Kryptonians, that is, Superman. However, facing their attacks full of flaws, Alice just raised her hands lightly to catch their fists. Shaking her head, Alice said, "It seems that you don't know how to fight." As she said that, Alice didn't have any sense of beauty at all, so she raised her legs and kicked the brothers and sisters respectively. That action is really not beautiful, but so what? Very useful. This is a battle, not a beauty pageant, and Alice doesn't care if she looks good or not. One by one kicked the magical Grace and the glorious Godfrey into the air, and Alice still refused to let it go. She rushed down head to foot, clenched her fists tightly with both hands, and made a posture of attacking at any time. But before she landed a fatal blow, a pair of big feet fell hard from the side. It's Lu Yuan. Motera was no longer in his hands. Obviously, he had dealt with it. Then he noticed that Alice had shot down the last two Dark Elites, and immediately jumped up and stepped on them hard. The poor two brothers and sisters were trampled into flesh by him, and they were left here forever. That is the flesh and blood of the new Protoss. After experiencing this great war, not only has it not been destroyed, but it has glowed with new vitality since then. With the final fall of the last two Dark Elites, Darkseid and his elites were all wiped out. Seeing this scene, the demon-like army in the sky, as well as the countless fleet of spaceships, all began to flee crazily. Even those demon-like armies who claimed to be fearless of life and death were killed. Even those members of the Dark Elite who were not selected, the new Protoss subordinates who did not show up, and even Darkseid's corpse did not dare to take back. Looking up at the lively scene in the sky, Alice obediently came to Lu Yuan's side, hugged his arm thicker than her waist, and asked, "Do you really want to let them go back?" Lu Yuan shrugged. Too lazy to continue. He was just too lazy to continue. Not unable to continue, let alone unable to keep all of them. As for the previous announcement of, no one should try to escape, it can also be considered to mean that no one should try to escape from the Dark Elite. After all, the Earth Alliance army and the 12 Lord Gods all became crowds of onlookers in the end, and even they were eating melons there. So why should I be exhausted? Who is this fighting for? For me? Lu Yuan couldn't help but snorted coldly, lowered his gaze, and looked forward. Under the leadership of Zeus, the 12 main gods of Greece, as well as Amazon and Atlantis, as well as the leaders of human countries, are coming here. They came to Lu Yuan and Alice cautiously and on guard. Are you also aliens? So what? 34. When Darkseid was defeated, the Dark Elite was wiped out, and all Darkseid's army was beaten away. Human representatives gathered around and asked Lu Yuan and Alice in a questioning tone, "Are you aliens too?" Lu Yuan looked at each other with a flat expression. What? Someone made a startled sound. Indeed, Lu Yuan, who is still in Doomsday form, is scary just by showing no expression on his face, not to mention how hideous and terrifying he would be if he showed a terrifying expression. Lu Yuan squinted at the man and snorted softly, "So what? But don't worry, I don't want to invade the Earth, and I'm already planning to leave." In fact, from the very beginning, Lu Yuan had already expected such a result. That's why he told Alice that he was going to travel in the universe. But it's not that he can't beat the old Protoss. Zeus may be able to beat Superman in his heyday, but he definitely can't beat Jean Chao. Alice is equivalent to a female Superman at the level of Jean Chao, and Lu Yuan is the Golden Destruction Day. She has already become a super-breaking existence and a higher-dimensional life. Lu Yuan definitely didn't hold back because they were forces on Earth. He even fought against Krypton, which was also regarded as his home planet. What's more, he has seen these white skins. Pigs don't like them from the very beginning. For various reasons, it is inconvenient to say more here. It was just because it was unnecessary, he was too lazy to deal with these troubles, and he wanted to spend more time with Alice. In fact, they are preparing for pregnancy, and he has to devote all his energy to offspring. Alice didn't know that Lu Yuan had a lot of guts in his stomach, otherwise he would have to pinch his lower back. Faced with Lu Yuan's unceremonious and indifferent attitude, some of the 12 main gods were not happy. As the new sun god, Apollo had something to say, pointed at Lu Yuan and warned, "Although you did help us, but I want to warn you, the sun belongs to me, it belongs to the great Olympus as the ruler of the sun. I will not allow you to approach the sun again." Huh. Lu Yuan tilted his head, looking at this brat. In fact, Apollo is indeed very young, because he was not the sun god 100,000 years ago. Definitely this is young for those long-lived species. For human beings, the Earth 100,000 years ago was still a primitive society. Lu Yuan sneered, "There's nothing left to grow. Although I didn't plan to go back to the core of the sun to sleep, but it's not because of you. The sun is your thing? You Olympian gods don't exist yet, the universe was already running. How thick-skinned do you have to be ashamed to claim the creator's stuff as your own? Do you know where you came from?" Even in ancient Greek mythology, The Olympus god system headed by Zeus is already the third generation. The first generation of gods is Gaia, the mother of the earth, and Uranus, the god of the sky. Uranus is the first generation of gods in ancient Greek mythology. Although he is not the first generation of gods, he is indeed the first generation of gods. Then Uranus was overthrown by his own child, the 12 Titans. The 12 Titans became the second generation of the gods, and Zeus's father, Cronus, became the king of the Titans, the second generation of the king of God. Then Zeus overthrew his father and became the third generation god-king. So, even in ancient Greek mythology, the sky, the earth, and even the sun, moon, and stars are not what the brat said was his. Apollo glared at Lu Yuan unconvinced, holding his longbow tightly. Artemis also held his silver longbow in the same hatred, and stood on the same front as his brothers. Seeing that the two sides were about to fight if they disagreed, Zeus had no choice but to stand up, and while signaling Apollo to retreat with his eyes, he smiled at Lu Yuan and said, "We haven't thanked you for your help to the earth. At least this point is undeniable. Lu Yuan's contribution and favor to the earth are great." In the end, Lu Yuan didn't give face at all and said, "You can't represent the earth, and you can't represent Olympus, and we don't look at your face." If it wasn't for the mysterious Dongfang, he would never have made a move. At least he would not have made such a move so quickly, just doing something thankless. Zeus' expression froze. He didn't expect Lu Yuan to be so shameless. "You guys are shameless. Who will give you face again? If you dare to fight, I will kill you immediately." Lu Yuan directly tore his face. He stared wide-eyed at these gods with extremely noble identities and status. They were indeed gods, and they were indeed old gods. But so what? Lu Yuan sneered. God? It's not like I haven't killed him before. Darkseid is also a god, or a new Protoss. As time goes by, these old gods who have lost the second world will only be gradually replaced by the new gods of the fourth world, and they will not live up to their expectations. And Lu Yuan even killed the king of the new Protoss, just the king of god of Olympus of the old Protoss. It doesn't matter to kill another one. For a moment, the atmosphere here became extremely stiff, but if anyone dared to be rash again, a big battle might break out again. And this time, although there are only Lu Yuan and Alice, the threat they bring will be more terrifying and powerful than the previous Darkseid army. Why do you say that? Because they were the ones who wiped out Darkseid and the Dark Elites who posed a huge threat to the Earth. How can the Earth Alliance, which is difficult to defeat even Darkseid and the Dark Elite, be their opponent? Just when the scene was so tense that a fight could start at any time, Arango stood up and acted as a peacemaker to appease him. "Oh, don't be so angry. We just won a big victory. Shouldn't we be celebrating?" Lu Yuan smiled. "Hee, don't say we, it should be us." Lu Yuan meant something. It wasn't him and the Earth Alliance, but he and Alice. We can defeat the enemy without you." Even Ares couldn't listen anymore. Lu Yuan spread his hands. "It seems that one of you almost died? Not ordinary people. Poseidon, the brother of Zeus and Hades, is also an indispensable member of the 12 main gods. The faces of the Greek gods were all ugly. No slaps in the face. But Lu Yuan doesn't mind. It's you who didn't want it. If they hadn't been so aggressive and superior at the beginning, Lu Yuan wouldn't have been so tit-for-tat. And who made the post-war negotiations, which should have been celebrated with enthusiasm, become like this? In other words, if you were an ordinary woman, at the moment should have advised Lu Yuan to be more generous, right? However, Alice on the side didn't have it at all. She simply took on her previous job as Lu Yuan's guard and adjutant, so she wouldn't hinder Lu Yuan. She believed that Lu Yuan could solve the problem. Even if the fight really starts, she will unswervingly follow in Lu Yuan's footsteps. After all, they are together. Lu Yuan is her man. No one can make him feel wronged. 35. No one expected that after defeating the great enemy Darkseid, the alliance would collapse in an instant. But it's not considered a split of the Earth Alliance. After all, Lu Yuan and Alice joined later and didn't join them in the first place. Lu Yuan didn't feel that he was betrayed either. He was the one who came to settle the matter with Darkseid. To be honest, even if the war situation is not good for the Earth, including the 3 mother boxes, it is almost necessary to integrate the Trinity into one. But they didn't ask him, did they? Since we came here on our own initiative, we didn't intend to hear a meaningless thank you from you. But if you plan to fight us here, then we can only destroy you together, right? Myths should have the appearance of myths, and myths should exist in the myths and stories and legends, Lu Yuan said, sizing up the Greek gods in front of him with dangerous eyes. Everyone knew that he was not threatening, and that was not a simple threat. Lu Yuan exuded undisguised malice and hostility. Everyone also knows that once the war resumes, life and death will inevitably be decided. How could this happen? Arango was anxious. He is the Asgardian who is in charge of the 2814 sector, including the Earth and the solar system. Once there are twists and turns here, he also needs to take responsibility. What's more, although Green Lantern is relatively big, at least they are also in the superhero camp, and they still have a basic sense of justice. So he didn't want to see troubles on the Earth, not to mention that Lu Yuan and Alice belonged to foreign forces, which were different from the battles between local civilizations. So Arango quickly dissuaded the two sides. After all, we have fought side by side. Even if we didn't form a friendship, shouldn't there be troubles again? And we just won a victory. What we should do now is to reap our spoils and have a carnival to celebrate, instead of continuing to fight and kill. Zeus thought for a while, nodded in approval and said, "That's it. I believe they will not pose a threat to the Earth." It has to be said that although the Greek gods looked aggressive, and Apollo's initial provocation was a bit too naive, it was entirely for his own benefit. But for now, the Greek gods are the Asgardians of Earth, and they are old gods, so they have this qualification. So they are also thinking about the safety of the Earth. If you think about the reaction when you suddenly encounter an alien monster like Doomsday, you should know how worried the Greek gods are about Lu Yuan. The king of Atlantis, the queen of Amazon, and the representatives of those human countries all heaved a sigh of relief. They are definitely on the same front as the Greek gods, and if there is another dispute, they will also fight the monster. They don't want to continue fighting, and it's not that they haven't seen the terrifying power of these two aliens, but just when they were about to turn around and leave, they heard Lu Yuan muttering unabashedly, "You be asterisk 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 D." What did you say? Ares was finally annoyed, turned around and shouted, "Do you have the guts to say it again?" He holds his weapon tightly, which is an artifact battle axe. In fact, including Ares in the Marvel Universe, most of the appearances are also holding a battle axe. But Lu Yuan was even more straightforward. No one could see his movements, and everyone felt that Lu Yuan had already arrived in front of Ares. With a big wave of Lu Yuan's hand, he easily pinched Ares' whole body with his claws and lifted him up. Lu Yuan was impatient to the extreme, opened his bloody mouth wide, and shouted in a mocking tone, "Squeezing you to death is easier than crushing an ant. You who regard human beings as ants, do you also care about human thoughts? Don't get too carried away with me, bug." Ares was struggling with all his strength, but even with all his strength, he couldn't shake Lu Yuan at all. Even as Lu Yuan tightened his palms, Ares' full body armor was making a clicking sound, and it might be destroyed at any time. It was made for him by Hephaestus, the god of fire and craftsmen, including Wonder Woman Diana's costume, which was also written by him. Diana's personal strength is unquestionable, but at the same time her equipment also played a big role, allowing her to tear it up with Superman. As a result, in front of Lu Yuan, Ares and his magical weapons were like paper. "Enough," Zeus yelled. His body was instantly covered by layers of terrifying electric light, and a terrifying electric ball appeared in his hand, threatening Lu Yuan. "Aliens, we have compromised. Why don't you still give up? Do you want to continue to stir up disputes? If you want to continue, we will accompany you to the end. There are no cowards in Olympus." Other Greek gods also responded one after another, and a war will start for a while. Alice didn't say anything, just came to Lu Yuan's side with a calm face. If they wanted to besiege Lu Yuan, she would rush up immediately. The scene became tense again, but in the end, Lu Yuan chose to let go. "Go away." Lu Yuan casually threw Ares out, as if he was really disposing of a bug when Ares hit the ground. He had to roll a few times to get back on his feet. Head down, Ares gripped his weapon tightly, feeling only humiliated. When had he ever been insulted like this? You know, he beat Darkseid abruptly, the plot of the Justice League version of the guide. At the moment, a foreshadowing was planted in Ares' heart at this moment. He wants to become stronger. He wants to become stronger than anyone else, and he will never allow anyone to dare to offend him. Later, he even went so far as to cause a terrible series of disputes, which filled the earth with war and strife. In the end, even the Greek Shindu couldn't stand it anymore and had a fight with Ares. However, Ares finally destroyed even the Greek Shindu who wanted to stop him, which made Olympus finally a thing of the past. Definitely that's something for later, and it doesn't seem to have anything to do with Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan had no idea that he would bring destruction to Olympus. Maybe he really deserved his name. He was the day of destruction, and he would bring destruction to others. The two sides looked at each other again, and then finally retreated slowly. Glancing at the backs of the Greek gods and the Earth-allied forces leaving, Lu Yuan turned around and walked towards Darkseid together with Alice. What about him? Alice asked Lu Yuan. Darkseid's body hadn't been processed yet, and the bodies of those dark elites. This is the new Protoss, and even their corpses may contain something very important. For example, Omega rays. In fact, Omega rays are more powerful and high-end than heat rays. Darkseid once became a multi-universe existence by relying on Omega rays. What's more, the Omega ray also includes many abilities, and it is very convenient to change the direction as you like. But how do we find that thing? Also, Lu Yuan looked thoughtfully, looking down at the ground under his feet. Anti-life equation? He seemed a little curious too. 36. For some reason, Lu Yuan also felt the power of the anti-life equation. Maybe it has something to do with him being the Doomsday? Or maybe it was because he had died. In fact, there are two life-related forces in the DC universe. One is the anti-life equation, and the other is the life equation. As soon as the two forces hear the name, you know that they are exactly opposite to each other. The life equation is the origin of life in the entire universe, and it is also closely related to the white light ring that represents life. The life equation is scattered throughout the universe, and every life is closely connected with it. But the anti-life equation is different. There is only one anti-life equation, and it is the only existence in the entire universe. Legend has it that the anti-life equation can not only corrode and engulf everything it encounters, but can even enslave life in the entire universe. People with insufficient strength and willpower will lose themselves just by hearing the name anti-life equation. That is another important power that Darkseid urgently needs to deal with Lu Yuan after he obtained the power of the Omega effect, and it is an important weapon that he intends to challenge Lu Yuan in order to restore his dignity. It can be seen how powerful the anti-life equation is. It's just that this thing can't be touched or seen, so how to dig it out? You can't destroy the Earth, can you? In fact, Darkseid is exactly this kind of plan. But Lu Yuan couldn't do that. How could he destroy the Earth? He just had a conflict with those white pigs. It has nothing to do with others. If he wants to kill, he just kills those guys. We can just forget it. Shaking his head, Lu Yuan could only choose to give up. But at least Darkseid's body was still there. Darkseid has obtained the power of the Omega effect. Even if he dies, it is still related to the Omega effect. Through him, maybe Lu Yuan will be able to find a way to gain the power of the Omega effect. Let's talk about what the power of the Omega effect does. To put it simply, it includes the ability to completely obliterate the existence of the opponent or revive it, and the general character will be directly killed in seconds. If Lu Yuan had grasped the power of resurrection back then, he wouldn't have to wait 100,000 years to welcome Alice back. Lu Yuan thought of almost every conceivable method in order to revive Alice. The white light ring that represents life, Superman's mother box technology that has been resurrected in the movie universe, the Speed Force's reverse time, and the Omega effect are also included. It was only when the sun's rays were indeed repairing and improving Alice's condition that he chose the most stupid, but also the most convenient method, that is, staying in the core of the sun for 100,000 years. Can revive Alice. Although Alice has been resurrected now, he still intends to take preventive measures. So Darkseid must be taken away. Then what about the mother box? And Darkseid's spaceship and main ship? Alice turned her head and looked around. In addition to Darkseid's body, the three silent mother boxes also landed there quietly. There is Darkseid's main ship. Those don't matter. Lu Yuan is not interested in other things, including the mother box. With his current strength and realm, the technology of the mother box is meaningless. He can even change his body structure at any time, and it's not impossible to change back to a human appearance, so he doesn't need the mother box to modify the technology of life form. As for those spaceships, he doesn't care even more. He and Alice can travel the universe by their own strength, so why do they need spaceships? Then let's go. The two are very self-aware. They know that they are not welcome here, and there was a lot of unhappiness just now. Now that he simply left voluntarily, Lu Yuan stepped forward and picked up Darkseid's head with one hand and his arm with the other, and flew up like this. Alice followed closely behind, and the couple left quickly. The next moment, there was an earth-shattering cry on the battlefield. Amazon, Atlantis. They were celebrating the hard-earned victory, and only then did they really confirm that they had indeed won. It can be seen how much pressure Lu Yuan and Alice put on them, and they didn't start cheering until they left. Some of them were also worried that some of Darkseid's subordinates still escaped from the spaceship, and would they come back for revenge in the future? Especially Irango. As an elite in the Green Lantern Corps, he is highly regarded by the Asgardians in the universe, and even knows some news about Darkseid. So he knows the power of the Apocalypse Star and the new Protoss better than others. Don't mention Apocalypse's brother, New Creation Star. Once the true master of Apocalypse returns, maybe the Earth will face another crisis, said Arango with a serious expression. Everyone thinks that Darkseid is the master of Apocalypse, but Darkseid also has a father, Yuga-Khan. That is the existence that lifted the new Protoss to this position with his own strength, and that is the strong man whose name alone is enough to make Dark Lord Darkseid run away without looking back. Yuga-Khan is the real master of Apocalypse. He is an invincible existence on Apocalypse. He can even do whatever he wants, modify law, alter reality, reverse time, rewrite the past and future, and even make life or die. It is said that just opening the eyes of Yuga-Khan is enough to knock a galaxy to the end of the universe. He is the true origin of the new Protoss. But I don't know why Yuga-Khan has disappeared for many years, and there has been no news of him for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years, so he should be fine. Arango secretly comforted himself. At this time, someone greeted Arango. My dear friend, you are also a great hero this time. Come and celebrate together. Arango cheered up and didn't care about anything else, nor what to do with the severed hand, and went to get together with the people to celebrate the victory with laughter. On the other hand, after returning home, Lu Yuan and Alice immediately began to study secretly. They were studying Darkseid, dismantling him piece by piece, just to find the secret of the Omega effect. At the same time, in a certain corner of the vast universe, a terrible army is invading a certain planetary civilization. The leader was none other than Lu Yuan, who had casually asked Darkseid before, his uncle Steppenwolf. Lu Yuan once wondered why Darkseid didn't bring Steppenwolf with him this time, but Darkseid told Lu Yuan that it was because Lu Yuan left him a shame, which made Steppenwolf mistakenly think that Darkseid could be challenged and defeated. As a result, Steppenwolf still made a mistake, and that failed rebellion caused Steppenwolf to be exiled and escaped a catastrophe. It is said that Steppenwolf will not be forgiven until he conquers 100,000 worlds for Darkseid. But now, Steppenwolf looked into space thoughtfully. Darkseid, is he dead? 37. Darkseid's death still had an impact on the universe. After all, he was Darkseid. Some influences and changes began to happen quietly. The most direct change was that Darkseid might lead his army to conquer one world after another. Now, however, many civilizations that should have disappeared have survived. Bear the brunt of the impact is the Apocalypse Star and the New Creation Star. Both the Apocalypse Star and the New Creation Star are planets of the so-called Fourth World, and they were originally descended from the same strain. In other words, the New Creation Star was also created by the new Protoss. If the Apocalypse Star is a living hell, then the New Creation Star is the so-called heaven. They are a race, just like the relationship between Zeus and Hades. The Lord of the Apocalypse Star is Darkseid, and the Lord of the New Creation Star is the so-called Heavenly Father. Heavenly Father is also Darkseid's brother, but contrary to Darkseid, Heavenly Father is benevolent and peace-loving, at least on the surface. He also felt Darkseid's disappearance and death, but he didn't know what happened. Maybe he'll do something too? Because the new Protoss all originated from the Apocalypse Star, that planet is the foundation and the most important thing of the new Protoss. He showed a thoughtful expression. The person concerned didn't know anything about these matters closely related to Lu Yuan, and he didn't bother to know. Now Lu Yuan has an important task to complete, which is the overall research on Darkseid. Unfortunately, I'm not a professional researcher. Lu Yuan couldn't help sighing. He and Alice are both soldiers. One is a commander who strategizes, the other is a general who takes the lead, but neither of them is a researcher. This makes their work extremely difficult to carry out. Alice didn't help at all and was busy in the kitchen, cooking for Lu Yuan with the prey she caught from the forest, the wild vegetables she found, and the fish she caught from the lake. At the moment, Alice is not as heroic as she was when she bravely killed the enemy on the battlefield and easily killed several Dark Elites. She doesn't have the air of a former female general. She looks like a housewife. She is too beautiful and too young. It is hard to imagine that she and Lu Yuan are actually Tin Hale's actual age. If the original subordinates of the two saw this, they might break their glasses all over the place. Definitely, Lu Yuan has wiped out all their former subordinates. Don't be busy, let's eat first. Alice called from the direction of the kitchen dining room. Lu Yuan agreed, and after finishing the last bit of work at hand, he took a long breath, waved off the white coat on his body, and changed into casual home clothes in a ball of golden light. In the restaurant, the couple sat face to face on both sides of the table, and there were many delicacies on the table, all cooked by Alice. In fact, Alice didn't know how to cook before because Krypton's technology is too advanced, and she doesn't need a general to cook by herself. She learned this when she and Lu Yuan visited nearby human cities, and she also learned it on purpose because she heard that in human families, wives cook for their husbands. It is definitely not used in noble families. Not to mention, Alice really learned a good cooking skill, but it's a pity that they are all Western cooking skills. Stew a dish, stew a soup, stew a meat, stew what? Or it's barbecue, grilled fish, grilled something. The question is, what about cooking? What about frying, stewing? When I have time, I really take her around our East. Lu Yuan secretly planned in his heart that one day, sooner or later, he will make Alice a world-class cook, so that he can also feast on his own food, right? Always feel like you're thinking about something rude? Alice on the opposite side glared at Lu Yuan. The two of them had known each other for many years and had grown up together since childhood. What kind of bad idea are you thinking? Lu Yuan smiled awkwardly and politely. I was thinking that my wife is getting more and more ingenious. Per mouth, Alice said with a smile, and then asked, by the way, you still haven't made any progress? Lu Yuan sighed. If I knew it earlier, I wouldn't be in a hurry to kill him. Speaking of which, I also ignored this matter at the time, so I have no clue now. The power of the Omega effect is a powerful force that can make Darkseid a multi-universe, which is so easy to obtain. Not to mention that it is even more difficult to explore from the dead Darkseid. On the contrary, he has a lot of grasp of the body structure of the new Protoss. But what's the point? As a Kryptonian, Lu Yuan still needs to envy the new Protoss? Can they bask in the sun and get stronger? Do they have endless potential? Can they become fifth dimension? They can. Yes, Kryptonians also have weaknesses, such as kryptonite and red sun rays. However, for those, Lu Yuan has long been immune. Now he can even eat kryptonite as a snack, and the light of the red sun can also be turned into his power, but the progress of ascension is a little slower. Even Alice can be immune to those weaknesses after becoming the fifth dimension. So, the Kryptonian is really the biggest bug in the DC universe. By the way, eat more fish eyes. Didn't you say that those things can make up your eyes? And fish brains. I'll give you all. Alice picked up the things she didn't eat into Lu Yuan's bowl with chopsticks. Although they ate Western food, they used chopsticks. This looks weird, but to Alice, she doesn't care. Anyway, she is not from the Earth, and she is new to learning to use a knife and fork or chopsticks. In Krypton, maybe use other tableware in Krypton? Lu Yuan casually picked up a fisheye, showing a thoughtful expression. Maybe it's time to analyze Darkseid's eyes, Lu Yuan muttered. In fact, although he was studying Darkseid's body, he did not thoroughly analyze it, such as Darkseid's eyes and brain. That's what he was prepared to leave at the end. In fact, he also knows that Omega rays reside in Darkseid's eyes, but the eyes are very fragile and there is only one pair. He didn't dare to do it easily. However, the research progress has encountered a bottleneck, and it is time to make a breakthrough. He can't be with Darkseid all his life, can he? He has been in the research room during this period of time, and his wife is Alice and not Darkseid. Speaking of which, Lu Yuan shivered when he thought of the scene of Doomsday and Darkseid being intimately together. Why did he think of these messy things? What a turnoff. Alice, come and help me later, and try to find out the Omega rays today. New. 38. After lunch, Lu Yuan helped Alice pack her things. Lu Yuan is not the type of uncle. His wife is in charge of washing and cooking. In fact, there is no need to wash clothes. They are already invulnerable to dust and water. And he is in charge of cleaning up the dishes. Definitely, Lu Yuan usually puts things in the dishwasher and presses the button to wash them automatically. Although the couple's small home is in a virgin forest, but with their fifth-dimensional realm, not only is this small villa decent, but even all the furniture and facilities inside are complete. There are even computers and TVs, not to mention refrigerators and washing machines. The only pity is that there is no way to solve the problem of electricity on the Earth, not to mention the network signal. Lu Yuan can solve the power system inside this small building, but there is no way for the signal. You can't make a satellite signal yourself, right? The point is, even if you have satellites, what would you watch if no one filmed for you? After tidying up, the couple came to the laboratory. There was no such laboratory originally. It was specially prepared for Darkseid. There is everything in the laboratory, all kinds of equipment that even Lu Yuan himself does not know what to call and how to use. He has prepared all of them. If you want to ask how he did it, the reason is actually very simple. He just reproduced the many devices he had experienced and used on him. Can it still be like this? Alice shook her head, dumbfounded and speechless. When she first learned that the truth was like this, She was speechless. She also wondered when Lu Yuan became a scientist. It turned out not to be. No wonder she never saw Lu Yuan use those instruments. He usually observes with X-ray and microscopic vision. Today, they will conduct a more detailed research thoroughly. Darkseid has 2 eyes, which are now placed in 2 tight containers. Because it is not for collection, it has not been soaked in formalin. Definitely necessary disinfection has been done, without damaging the integrity of the nerves and eyeballs. You come to observe one, I'll observe one, then compare, and finally observe the brain, Lu Yuan said, taking one of the eyeballs and walking to the side console. He didn't see any equipment prepared by him. He directly held the container, then lowered his head and leaned over it and began to watch. That's right, he was just seeing with his own eyes. So those instruments are really just a decoration? Alice shook her head, didn't say much about his hobbies, and also picked up another container and began to enter the perspective of microscopic vision to observe Darkseid's second eye. In fact, they don't really need any equipment because their microscopic vision is higher than the power, degree, of any microscope. Coupled with the vision of X-ray perspective, whether it is detecting from the surface or penetrating the interior, there is no problem at all, and there is no need to worry about X-ray radiation. Suddenly, Lu Yuan raised his head and looked at Alice. Alice also put down the container in her hand at the same time, showing a surprised expression. Although I don't know if it's the power of the Omega effect, but there is still that power in his eyes, Lu Yuan said after talking about his discovery, and immediately returned to new observations. And Alice subconsciously looked at another container not far behind her. There is a huge amount of brain tissue in it, which was excavated from Darkseid's head, and it is still in good condition. The function of the eyes is only to transmit the pictures seen to the brain, but it is actually the brain nerves that actually make judgments and analyze the pictures, Alice said without turning her head. Lu Yuan heard what she meant and agreed without raising his head. I definitely know that there may still be real Omega effect power left in his brain tissue. But this is not the first time we have contacted each other. So start here first. It's not that he doesn't know, but he wants to be more sure. That's why it took until today to analyze Darkseid's eyes, and his brain had to wait until the last link. Alice shrugged and continued to help him observe the other eye. Both of them are not ordinary people, and there is nothing taboo about observing one eye, and they will not feel horrible. They have killed everyone, and they are afraid of the person they killed? But as Alice said just now, the clues they found in the 2 eyes are really limited, and they can only trace the power of the Omega rays used by Darkseid. However, that power to the nerve endings of the eyeballs was interrupted at it. Seems that if you want to further understand the power of the Omega effect, you can only discover it from Darkseid's brain tissue. Lu Yuan had no hesitation at all, so he immediately brought the container and observed it with Alice. Not to mention, it really made them discover the existence of the Omega effect. It was a mysterious power, and even for them, that power was considerable. That's a multi-universe power, and it may even be related to the power of origin, Lu Yuan judged from the perspective of the 5th dimension. If it was before, he still couldn't understand the true face of this power. But now it is different. He can actually see that the Omega effect also belongs to the power of origin. At least it is inextricably related to the power of origin. The power of origin is closely related to the wall of origin, and even the infinite multi-universe is constructed by the power of origin, including the origin of all life. That is, the life equation, which is also a kind of power of origin. There are many types of forces of origin, all forces of the emotional spectrum, visible and invisible, and all mystical forces that come in from within or from outside the walls of origin. Anything connected with origin should not be taken lightly. For example, Yuga Khan has such a transcendent status and power precisely because he has mastered a part of the power of origin. Everything has to do with the power of origin. But today, the power of the Omega effect they perceived was actually linked to the power of origin. At least, Darkseid can become a multi-universe existence through the power of the Omega effect. The Omega effect is not just Omega rays, but actually has more power. In addition to the resurrection mentioned above and the true obliteration of life, it can also open the door to other multi-universes, and it can also break others into the universe. In the space-time turbulence and space-time cracks, perhaps Darkseid has not fully grasped this power yet, so he is impatient to find the anti-life equation, or maybe he was killed by Lu Yuan simply and neatly before he could show the full power of the Omega effect. In short, this power cannot be underestimated. But now, this power has been mastered by Lu Yuan. 39. Finally, with Alice's help, Lu Yuan got his wish and came into contact with the real power of the Omega effect. He also generously shared this clue with Alice, and the two of them went to touch this power together. Through Darkseid's brain organization, they are connected to the Omega effect, and then use their strong will and transcendent realm and life form to contact the mysterious and unpredictable power. It's just that this process is very time-consuming. They don't know how much time it took. It may be a few days, or it may be a few years. Anyway, it is less than a few thousand years. But in the end, both of them really got the Omega effect. When the two came to the outside yard, they stood in the middle of the primeval forest, and they opened their eyes with them. Shwa. Two golden heat rays rushed out of their eyes in an instant and began to circle around them. Originally, heat ray could not change direction, only straight line. But now their heat ray integrates the effect of Omega rays, not only retains the power of the original heat ray, but also increases all the power of Omega rays. Now, their heat ray has become even more terrifying. Any opponent whose strength is not strong enough to compete with them will be completely obliterated, and the meaning of existence will be completely obliterated. This is terrible, and maybe even any resurrection method can't save it, including black lights and white lights. They can also use this thing to allow themselves to travel through time and space. Definitely they can do it with their own power. They can even destroy the world with Omega rays. Definitely heat ray can also do it. The terrifying high temperature of 20,000 degrees Celsius is enough to destroy any planetary civilization. It seems that the improvement effect of the Omega effect is not great, but it is not a small enhancement for them. After all, it is also a multi-universe level of power. After they fully grasped this power, they realized that it was not that Darkseid was not strong, but that they were too strong. Darkseid is actually very strong. He once took Lu Yuan's heavy blow head-on. And now Lu Yuan, that is the fifth dimension Jin Chao special Doomsday, that terrifying power is simply unimaginable. If he hadn't met Lu Yuan, Darkseid would never have been so miserable. But it's too late to say anything now. What's next? Lu Yuan asked Alice while burning Darkseid's useless body. Alice stretched fiercely and said with a tired face, I don't know how long it has been. I would think it has been hundreds of years. Let's go and have a rest first. Unlike Lu Yuan, who has endless physical strength, Alice will still get tired as a Superman. Lu Yuan's eyes lit up, and he immediately followed. Let's go together. Alice rolled her eyes beautifully, but said nothing. For the next few days, the two took a good rest. Then Alice replenished enough energy to become energetic again. Lu Yuan was also full of energy, making Alice always look at him strangely. Want to go to a nearby human country? It's been a long time, right? Lu Yuan asked, making 2 cups of coffee, one for himself and the other for Alice. Although the process of his transformation is very simple, it is actually very troublesome. First of all, it is not a blindfold. He needs to create 2 cups out of thin air, and the coffee is real, as well as hot water. If it's just an illusory thing like a blindfold, you can't drink the taste, right? This is their current state. Although they have not yet reached the level of the creator, it is still very easy to rewrite reality at will like this, and even create something. It's just that life with a soul cannot be created yet. As Lu Yuan and Alice live longer, they will become more and more relaxed and proficient at mastering their own powers, including until now, even the yellow light of the sun basking on the earth still allows them to ascend everyday strength. Their potential is unlimited, and there is no upper limit, but it is a pity that their realm is too high, and the power of promotion has become very weak and difficult to detect. But over time, it is also very impressive. Alice took a sip of something, thought for a while, and shook her head. Forget it. We haven't shown up for so long, and it will be very troublesome to go to approach the human city rashly. Besides, the human world is changing with each passing day, and we still have to go get used to it. Why don't you go outside? Didn't you promise to take me to the universe to see more things? They have stayed on the earth for a long time, not because they are tired, but because they want to see more new things. Lu Yuan casually agreed. All right, actually, I've thought about it before. The effect of the sun in the solar system on improving us is insignificant, but if we look for brighter light, younger and stronger, including higher temperature, wouldn't the effect be better with fixed star? The universe is vast, and there are many fixed stars that are brighter than the sun. With their supervision, they can naturally see that there is a fixed star that is millions of times brighter than the sun in the nearby. There is also temperature. Their heat ray is still the main method, and it may be related to the temperature of the sun. If you go to the higher temperature fixed star to learn, maybe the maximum temperature of heat ray can also be raised to a terrifying level. If it can reach hundreds of millions of degrees Celsius, then everything in the world will melt. But just when the two packed up the house and let the small building they created with mysterious power disappear out of thin air, they planned to leave the earth. An uninvited guest quietly appeared in front of them. It was a woman with a half-human, half-tree appearance. Maybe you could call her a dryad? Hello, my name is Daraides, and I am also the goddess of the forest. I am also the maid of the goddess Artemis. I specially invite you on behalf of the gods of Mount Olympus. The king of gods Zeus wants to receive you there. You, said the dryad who called himself Daraides. Lu Yuan was puzzled. When did we say we were going to visit? Crazy? Deludes was obviously taken aback, as if he didn't expect that anyone would dare to refuse Zeus' invitation. Suddenly, she remembered what Artemis said before she left and hurriedly added, "That's right. It is said that this time I want to discuss with you about the mother box. Although I don't know what the mother box is." Mother box? Lu Yuan frowned. At that time, he really left the disposal of the mother box to the Earth Alliance army. In fact, he didn't care about the mother box at all. But when it comes to Mount Olympus, maybe go see it. Then go and have a look. So Lu Yuan and Alice changed their minds and went to Olympus to see what Zeus had to say to them. 40. Olympus. In fact, Lu Yuan had misunderstood one thing before, and it was not until he came here that he realized that he had misunderstood. He always thought that Olympus meant Mount Olympus, the mountain that existed on the earth. But in fact, Olympus is a world. It does not exist in the earth plane, but another space. The second world? The breath of the old gods. Lu Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. After conducting in-depth research on Darkseid, he can now understand the meaning of gods. God is more than just a title. Superman was once powerful enough to surpass those old Protoss, but Superman is still a human being rather than a god. Gods are blessed with godheads and have many special abilities and can even achieve immortality. Let's put it this way. The old Protoss were born before all human beings. They used to live in the second world. Later, because of the disputes among the old Protoss, the second world was destroyed. After that, the fourth world was born, which is the world of the new Protoss. The old Protoss of Greek mythology once lived in Olympus in the second world, and after the destruction of the second world, they brought out the space where Olympus was located. So the old gods of Greek mythology do not live under the same sky as humans, they are in another world. Lu Yuan at the moment was brought to this space by Daraides, who was known as the goddess of the forest, and walked through a temple exuding a simple atmosphere all the way, and came to the gate of a splendid palace. Lu Yuan and Alice stood outside the palace gate, looking at all this curiously. They have seen the super-technological civilization of Krypton and the primitive atmosphere of the Earth today, but they have never seen such a mythical civilization. They feel fresh, but they don't have even the slightest sense of awe, because there is no need. Daraides glanced at the two of them, didn't say much, stepped forward, bowed his head respectfully, and explained to the door. "The great 12 gods, Daraides has brought the guests." A majestic voice came from inside the door. "Bring them in." Playing tricks, Lu Yuan sneered. Alice beside her expressed a different opinion. "They are gods, so there is no need to pretend." "Well, I was complained by my wife." Lu Yuan shrugged and took the lead in walking forward. Deludes was left behind instead. This glorious temple is majestic, not literally, but literally. After all, there was a Titan period in Greek mythology, and Titan was used as a symbol of Titan, so the scale of the hall was not designed according to human beings. Even the gate was more than 10 meters high and several meters wide. The threshold alone is nearly half a meter high, but it was not difficult for Lu Yuan and Alice. They flew up lightly, crossed the threshold and entered the temple. After entering, there is a long corridor with 2 rows of stone statues standing on both sides, which are the statues of the 12 main gods. Lu Yuan couldn't help complaining. Do gods also want to worship themselves? How can anyone set up a memorial tablet for themselves in their own home? It's just weird. Daraides followed behind them with his head bowed, without speaking. It was Alice who refuted her husband's statement again, and made her own speculation. Should we also hang some photos of ourselves in our own home? Maybe those statues are pictures of the old Protoss themselves? Lu Yuan squinted at Alice, always feeling that she is particularly aggressive today. Is it really okay to complain about her husband like this? Is this interesting? Alice stuck out her tongue and made a grimace. Who told you to talk nonsense? Don't embarrass me. Even if you don't have a good impression of them, there's no need to be black. Anyway, just to see what's going on with them, and then go away, isn't it? So don't cause trouble. You don't want to really kill them, do you? Alice knew Lu Yuan too well, knowing that this narrow-minded guy must still remember the friction with the Greek gods back then. But she also understands that Lu Yuan is not someone who will take revenge. He will not kill someone just because of such a small collision. So she knew that although Lu Yuan had been looking for trouble since he came in, he wouldn't really do it. so she kept making jokes there, just to prevent him from making trouble. Lu Yuan snorted softly and walked forward, pretending to be angry. In the end, Alice didn't panic at all, but covered her mouth and snickered. "You're such a grown-up person, and you're still having a temper tantrum." Well, Lu Yuan stood dumbfounded and waited for her, and couldn't pretend anymore. The couple had a great time playing by themselves, regardless of whether Darkseid was happy about being stuffed with dog food. Anyway, stop and go. After admiring the splendor of the temple, they finally came to the interior of the main hall. It was a super huge amount of space, and in the middle was a round table like white jade, surrounded by 12 main gods of the Greek gods, and the three brothers Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades sat side by side on the table directly opposite the door. First, Zeus is in the middle. Because this is Olympus, the home of the Greek gods, it also makes the 12 main gods look particularly tall, each of which has a titan-like body. They looked condescendingly at Lu Yuan and Alice who walked in, but they didn't dare to underestimate them. Lu Yuan and Alice are not afraid at all. Lu Yuan also sarcastically said, "Isn't the strength not enough for the height?" You. Ares, the god of war, stood up, which made him taller and more powerful, with a height of more than 10 meters. Ares, Athena shook her head at her brother. Although they are not a mother, they are all children of Zeus. Zeus is playing a big game of chess, and among the 12 main gods, his children occupy half of the positions. "Tell me, what's the matter with us today?" Alice said, fearing that Lu Yuan would disagree with them and continue arguing, which would be meaningless, so she quickly opened her mouth to get to the point. Zeus didn't want to quarrel with Lu Yuan either, so he took advantage of the situation and said, "It's been 10 years since that battle, and there was an unnecessary quarrel because of a little misunderstanding, so I didn't inform you of our subsequent disposal of the spoils, so I specially invited you over to explain." Although Zeus and the others don't know the specific function of the mother box, they also know the importance of the mother box, as well as those alien spacecraft and so on. According to Zeus, those alien spaceships are too advanced for the current Earth, so the Greek gods decided to bring spaceships and other alien technologies to Olympus for collection. Now that Olympus has collected those spaceships, the remaining 3 mother boxes will naturally be handed over to others. It is said that the 3 mother boxes were divided into 3 parts. One was taken away by the Amazon and placed on Paradise Island. Another was taken away by the Atlanteans, and the last one was taken away by all human countries and was still in the Olympic Games. Witnessed by the gods of Sri Lanka, it was buried somewhere underground, and they swore before the gods that no one would dig it out. Aren't they worried about you digging it out? You. 41. In fact, the main purpose of the Greek gods to invite Lu Yuan and Alice this time is to make the necessary explanations to them and to explain the follow-up of the spoils at the beginning, but also to salvage the relationship between the two parties. Even the old Protoss with their eyes above the top had to admit the strength of Lu Yuan and Alice. They were qualified enough to face the old Protoss. But as for Lu Yuan's bad mouth, once you offend him, it's really merciless. For example, Zeus just said that the mother boxes of all human countries were buried together under the witness of their Greek gods, and swore to their Greek gods that they would never dig them out privately. As a result, Lu Yuan immediately asked suspiciously, "Then they won't worry about you digging it out?" "Listen, what is this called? Who could stand such an insult?" Ares flicked his sleeves and left. He couldn't bear it. Since he was not allowed to have conflicts with Lu Yuan, he simply didn't want to be angry. Alice didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and secretly hit Lu Yuan. "Don't be unreasonable. It's been more than 10 years. Do you still remember the little friction back then?" Lu Yuan snorted softly, trying to make him have a good impression of the Greek gods. Forget about it for the rest of your life. In fact, he wasn't that stingy, but the Greek gods were wrong. They wanted to trouble Lu Yuan after the war, which reminded Lu Yuan of being betrayed by Krypton. Alice's death was an unforgettable pain in Lu Yuan's life, even more unforgettable than being betrayed by his mother planet. This is why he really holds grudges. If it's just such a small matter, it's enough for someone to tell you. There's no need for us to come here in person. Who are you tormenting? Are you still putting on a high face? Do you want me to remove you from that high position? Pull it off one by one. Lu Yuan started. His bad temper came up again. But don't blame him. The Greek gods only sent a little-known character to invite them over, and then they themselves sat there waiting? He doesn't even have a seat. Do you blame him for his bad mouth? Who are you? Who do you look down on? Believe it or not, the 12 Lord gods were embarrassed. Artemis got up quickly and explained. In fact, it is because the place where you live in seclusion is too mysterious. We have been looking for your whereabouts on islands in the sea, countries on land, and even all over the world. We have been searching for you since 10 years ago. I have been looking for you all the time. However, It was not until yesterday that I found you in that primeval forest. That's why I asked my maid to invite you. Also, the chairs here are too big. Instead of making you sit down uncomfortably, it's better to ignore this embarrassing part, isn't it? Those tables and chairs were prepared for titans, and they were too big for ordinary people. Sitting on a chair or standing on a table will only make you look more like Joker. In fact, it is not that the Greek gods have not considered these, let alone deliberately embarrassing them. It's just that Lu Yuan has preconceived it and didn't bother to listen to their explanations. He waved his hands and said, "Okay, I know that we don't like each other and we can't be friends. My wife and I have already planned to leave the earth, so you continue to be your gods with peace of mind. Are you leaving?" "Yes, we plan to go around the universe and see more beautiful scenery." Alice showed a bright smile. As long as she was with her beloved, no matter where she went, she felt happy. How many hardships did they go through to get together? Hearing about Lu Yuan and Alice's plan to leave the earth, the Greek gods looked at each other. To be honest, this news was unexpected and surprising. More rest assured. To put it in an ordinary person's way, no one would be at ease with a tiger as a neighbor. How can you allow others to snore on the side of the couch? Then when will you leave? Cupid subconsciously asked. Among the 12 main gods, there are powerful gods and gods who are not good at fighting. Unlike on the battlefield before, only the complete 12 main gods appeared herein at the moment, including Aphrodite, the god of love, which is the corresponding Venus in Roman mythology. Lu Yuan sneered in his heart. Did he still show his feet? But he was also a little impatient, and said happily, "Now." As he said that, Lu Yuan stretched out his hand to hold Alice's hand, and the two of them didn't even bother to say goodbye. They turned into two golden lights and left Olympus in an instant at a speed exceeding the speed of light. But when leaving the space of Olympus, Lu Yuan suddenly stopped and looked back at the temple in the distance. "What's the matter?" Alice asked. "You don't really intend to destroy this place, do you?" She wasn't worried. She just didn't feel the need to do it. Lu Yuan shook his head. "I'm no longer needed." "What's the meaning? Didn't you notice the strangeness in Ares? Aren't you mad at me?" Alice covered her mouth and smirked, and rolled her eyes at Lu Yuan with some reproach. Lu Yuan also chuckled. He definitely did it on purpose. He didn't hide his disgust and hostility at all in the temple before. But that's not what he was going to say. Lu Yuan said, "Ares doesn't give Zeus and others any face at all. He has already shown his ambition. It depends on whether the Greek gods can respond in time. Otherwise, Ares, as the god of war, is likely to... Rebellion? Well, it's none of our business anyway." Lu Yuan has already seen that Ares has evil intentions, and the Greek gods have escaped the crisis of being destroyed together with the second world. But maybe Ares will make their reckoning come again. But as Lu Yuan said, this has nothing to do with him. Even if the Greek gods are destroyed like this, he will not care at all. "So, it's time for our own trip?" Lu Yuan asked, turning his eyes back on his lover in front of him. "Are you ready?" "No matter where I go, as long as I'm by your side, I'm happy to go." Alice stretched her skirt with her hands and made a lady's etiquette. Lu Yuan also bowed his body, and the two suddenly burst into laughter. That's the so-called aristocratic etiquette they learned from human countries, but it's just a bit nondescript. Gone. The two turned into two golden lights again. This time they went straight to the Earth's atmosphere and rushed out into the outer space in one fell swoop. Deep in the Temple of Olympus, the 12 main gods were silent for a long time. They've left Earth. I see. Finally, I can completely relax. When I faced that monster before, I was always in fear. Yeah, he's scarier than Darkseid back then. The 12 main gods breathed a sigh of relief. Even Zeus nodded approvingly. On the other side, Ares stood in his temple, looked up at the edge of the Earth's atmosphere, and held his axe tightly. "Next time we meet, I will definitely make you pay the price. How dare you insult Ares, the god of war? You will regret it. But before that, I want to accumulate strength, and I want to become the only god of Olympus." 42. The universe is vast, and no one knows the actual file size of the universe, unless someone has actually measured it, or only the creator knows it. Lu Yuan and Alice are not creators, and they have no spare time to measure the file size of the universe, unless they are really too boring and have nothing to do in the future. The universe is prosperous. Unlike what humans in this era think, the Earth is the center of the universe. On the contrary, even in the solar system, the Earth is just a planet of the sun, which is inconspicuous except for life. In this huge universe, there are not only the bright starry sky, but also countless space civilizations, the so-called aliens. But the universe is also silent. In the vacuum of outer space, there is no transmission of sound. Even if meteorite groups collide with each other, it is done in silence. Everything seemed so quiet. And in space, almost no life can survive. Unless it is strong enough. Such as Lu Yuan and Alice. Ha ha ha, come and chase me. If you catch up with me, I'll let you hee hee hee. The two are playing. Not only can they roam freely in the cosmic space, but also those elements that are fatal to human beings have no effect on them, and they can even ignore the rules of the vacuum space and talk as they like. Alice was dressed in white, with brilliant blonde hair floating behind her, and flew in front quickly. Lu Yuan, also in a white suit, followed closely behind. The two have left the Earth and the solar system far away, and are wandering aimlessly in the universe. Although there are large areas of empty space in the universe, it is difficult to find a planet with civilization and life, and it is impossible to replenish food and water sources at any time. But this is not a problem. First of all, they don't need to eat normally to replenish energy. For them, not only do they have unimaginable power, but they can replenish enough energy just by being exposed to a little yellow fixed star light. Isn't eating just to replenish the energy you need? But the method of actually supplementing energy by eating is the most clumsy. How many things and resources do they have to consume if they want to replenish enough energy in their state? I'm afraid there isn't enough food for the entire planet, right? How can the energy provided by all the resources on the entire Earth be comparable to that provided by the sun? They are not afraid of loneliness, because it is enough for them to be with each other. In this way, they started from the Earth, and first looked around on various planets and satellites in the solar system. Even if some planets are dead and full of death, they don't mind. Some planets are extremely cold because they are too far away from the sun. They even found life on Mars. It turns out that the Martians from at the moment still exist, although scientists believe that Mars was indeed a suitable planet for the birth of life. But that was at least tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of years ago. But this is DC. In fact, when Martian manhunter Rong and Junzi arrived on the Earth had already entered the modern era. And the background of the current era is at least 5,000 years ago in the era of the Justice League. Don't forget that the ancient war just happened just now. So the current Martians are still alive and well. The Martians could adapt to the harsh environment of Mars, but then a disaster happened. Some stories said that a plague wiped out the Martians, and some said that the white Martians hunted the green Martians. In some settings, the Martian blackened becomes the villain and exterminates his own kind. But that's for later. Lu Yuan and Alice didn't disturb the Martians, but came here quietly and left quietly after observing the Martians. When they were still leaving the solar system, they encountered Urango, who was patrolling in space. It's been a long time. Urango came to the two of them, looking very enthusiastic. He had been helped by Alice back then. Otherwise, it would not have been as simple as breaking off a hand. Speaking of hands, Urango's broken hand has been repaired, and it seems that Oua Xing's skills are also good. By the way, what would happen to you if you took off your ring here? Lu Yuan looked at Urango's hand thoughtfully. Urango was taken aback and instantly left a long distance at the speed of light. Alice patted Lu Yuan with her hand. Are you a devil? Don't be afraid of Urango. He was just joking. They had no conflict with Urango, and Urango spoke for them at the time. So the atmosphere between the two sides was not bad. When Urango got the news that they wanted to play in the universe, he also wanted to invite them to his hometown. Urango is definitely not a human from Earth. He has a head and appearance similar to a legendary dragon, that is, a lizard head. Lu Yuan and Alice glanced at each other. They had no purpose anyway. So why don't they go and have a look? But at this moment, Urango's ring suddenly emitted a dazzling green light. Is that a warning from the Green Lantern ring? Oops, a group of unidentified enemies are invading our sector, Urango said with a change of expression in the news he had received. How do you know it's the enemy? Urango hurriedly explained in the most concise way. The news I received shows that, like Darkseid back then, that group of people invaded and conquered many civilized planets in the universe along the way, and they even conquered a few planets. Damn, they are targeting my home planet. Sorry, I have to go back. As he spoke, Urango quickly turned into a green light and flew away. Lu Yuan looked at Alice. The latter knew that Lu Yuan had become interested, but in fact, why didn't her own eyes shine? The two had a tacit understanding, and at the same time they turned into golden light and chased after them. In fact, Urango is already very fast. Green Lantern can move at the speed of light, or even exceed the speed of light, and even open a wormhole to travel through it. However, Lu Yuan and Alice caught up with Urango in an instant at a faster speed. Their speed is not only the speed of light, but far beyond the speed of light. "Urango, let's help," Alice said with a smile. Urango glanced at the two gratefully. "Thank you." The three of them immediately turned into three lights and went straight across the universe to Urango's hometown in the galaxy next to the solar system. And there, indeed, a terrifying army appeared. It was a mobile fortress that was even more terrifying than the Darkseid fleet. It turned out to be a terrifying fleet built from a single planet as the main ship. No wonder it can conquer other cosmic civilizations and use the planet as a fortress. How terrible the weapons must be. 43. What appeared in front of Lu Yuan and the others was an extremely large and terrifying army and mobile fortress. They saw that it was even a main ship made of a planet. What a big deal it must be. Moreover, there are tens of thousands of mothership-class spaceships surrounding the mobile fortress. Since there is an entire planet as the main ship, it can naturally carry more heavyweight warships. To be honest, just looking at the information obtained on the surface, this will be a much more terrifying enemy than Darkseid. No wonder many planetary civilizations can be conquered. By the way, did this guy not bump into Darkseid? It's really lucky. Lu Yuan just wanted to complain about this. Lu Yuan didn't believe that Darkseid would be easily defeated. It wasn't for self-improvement. He was Doomsday, so it was different. That's Darkseid, who can be his enemy. So he felt that this group of guys who came out of nowhere were very lucky. If they met Darkseid, they would definitely be destroyed without accident, and even the exaggerated mobile fortress would be taken away. Now is not the time to talk about this, Urango said anxiously. Such a huge team has caused chaos on Urango's home planet. That was indeed too spectacular. A whole planet suddenly appeared out of thin air and came straight towards him, and everyone would have to panic. What's more, Urango seems to be powerful, but he also has self-knowledge. Let him alone stand up to the main ship built by an entire planet. How is this possible? It seems that I have to ask for support. I hope that the Asgardians and other Green Lanterns in Sector 2813, the other half of the galaxy where Krypton is located, can come to help as soon as possible, Urango said while lowering his head and using the green light ring to make contact. Strangely, he didn't hear the voices of Lu Yuan and Alice. Subconsciously raised his head. There were still figures of those two people beside him. Looking forward, Urango's eyes widened, and he saw two extremely dazzling golden lights colliding head-on. Boom. Even the vacuum of the universe seems to transmit such a terrible sound. In fact, there is no sound, it is just a description. I saw Lu Yuan and Alice bumping into each other abruptly, and even with their steel bodies, they not only forced the terrifying planetary fortress to stop, but also left two holes on the surface of the planetary fortress. A hole that must be horrific. That's right, it's the void, because the two of them have already penetrated the planetary fortress and went out from the other side. Urango opened his mouth wide, watching all this in a daze. What? On the other side, after penetrating the Star Fortress, Lu Yuan and Alice were immediately discovered and surrounded by enemy spaceships. There was no communication, and there was no need for it. Pieces of energy shells formed a barrage of bullets, covering the two of them in an instant. However, Lu Yuan and Alice are no longer in the state they were on Krypton, and Alice is no longer an ordinary Kryptonian. Not only did they not dodge, they didn't even bother to defend, and they even showed a relaxed expression. It's as if those terrible energy shells are bathing them, and it seems that they can even absorb the energy of those energy shells. After all, those energies are originally just pure energies. Why can't they be absorbed? It's harmless anyway. This is like the nuclear weapons of future human beings. It is fatal to ordinary people, but for Lu Yuan and Alice, nuclear energy is also one of the energies they can absorb. But it's not interesting to be beaten passively like this all the time. It's not about the clothes. Their clothes are completely created by their own power, which is equivalent to their own defense. Naturally, the power that can't hurt them can't break their clothes. Clothing. It's just that they didn't come to be beaten. Shwa shwa. Suddenly, two terrifying heat rays with two terrifying rays of light pierced through the barrage of energy cannonballs, and they were definitely the heat rays of Lu Yuan and Alice. They started to fight back. The terrifying heat ray not only has the power to melt any substance, it pierced through two spaceships in an instant, and even after integrating the power of the Omega effect, it can change directions as Lu Yuan and Alice wish. So their light not only destroyed the two enemy spaceships immediately, but also circled around. This is extremely frightening. The heat ray not only pierces through the spaceship like a laser ray, but the terrifying Omega effect can destroy everything, so I saw those spaceships start to dissolve and disintegrate one by one, until nothing was left in the end. The fleet of tens of thousands of spaceships was wiped out by the two in an instant. After all, their heat ray is also at the speed of light, but those spaceships are too bulky to avoid such flexible light at all. So in a short period of time, all spaceships were wiped out. It wasn't until this time that Arango, who had reacted, caught up with Lu Yuan and Alice, bypassing the Star Fortress and coming in front of them. You all did this? Arango was completely dumbfounded. Lu Yuan is checking if there is anything wrong with Alice, and Alice is also helping Lu Yuan sort out her hairstyle and the traces that do not exist on her face. The two just showed their affection like no one else and didn't pay attention to the planetary fortress in front of them at all. It's not us, is it you? Lu Yuan asked back. Alice pinched Lu Yuan's cheek amusedly and angrily and complained. When did you become angry? You hate the air, even our friends. Arango generously expressed that he didn't care, not to mention being bullied. As long as Lu Yuan and Alice can help him protect his mother planet and defeat this group of powerful enemies, it doesn't matter if he feels aggrieved. Okay, it's time to meet the owner of this planet. Lu Yuan set his sights on the last planet fortress. All three of them knew that the fleet that was dealt with just now was nothing more than the escort fleet for this planetary fortress, and it was just a small role. The real boss is the master of this planetary fortress, and the enemy already knew of their existence, but so far, there has been no attack on the planetary fortress. What does this mean? This shows that the owner of the planetary fortress not only knows the strength of Lu Yuan and Alice, but is even confident, waiting for them to land on the planet. It seems that the enemy is very confident. Is this waiting for us to throw ourselves into a trap? Alice sneered. Then what are we waiting for? Just as he wishes. Lu Yuan said that he also said that he was angry, but in fact, after Alice let go of her hands and feet, she was much crazier than him. After all, she is a female general who went to battle to kill the enemy, so she has nothing to do with a man when she is heroic. 44. There is also an artificial atmosphere outside the fortress of this planet. It can be seen that this planet once belonged to a dead star without life. Perhaps this layer of atmosphere is more of a defensive effect. After all, some meteorite fragments can be seen everywhere in the universe. Lu Yuan and the others easily broke through the defense of the atmosphere, which is very simple and requires little effort. But when they entered, they were immediately attacked. Whoosh whoosh, countless powerful missiles suddenly rose from the ground, targeting the three of Lu Yuan in the sky. Arango quickly released a green light with the ring, forming a huge amount of wall in front of him to act as a shield. But Lu Yuan and Alice at the side didn't pay attention to those attacks at all. Boom. The missile exploded on the defense of Arango, causing a series of noises, and also stirred up a lot of sparks and smoke. As the so-called law of smoke without injury, Lu Yuan led, followed by Alice, passed through the explosion area before the smoke dispersed. They didn't care about the various elements left behind after the missile exploded, and went straight to the surface. Not only has the surface of the planet been transformed into a complete set of steel armor, but it can be seen everywhere on this side. Countless armed equipment has been raised and has not been recovered in the future. Seeing that the second wave of missiles had been reloaded, Lu Yuan stomped on the ground expressionlessly. Boom. The entire ground shook for a while, and the steel armor on the surface surged even more, as if a wave appeared, centered on Lu Yuan, and quickly spread out to the surroundings. The power of this kick fully affected hundreds of miles away. All the steel armor was destroyed, including the weapons and equipment on the ground were all turned into fly ash, and those missiles that had not been launched even exploded on the spot. Boom. The entire Earth instantly turned into a sea of flames. Even the locations of Lu Yuan and Alice were submerged, and their at-the-moment status could not be seen. Arango was worried at first, but he immediately remembered the strength of the two, so he stopped worrying. Arango raised his head and looked into the distance, trying to find the whereabouts of the planet's owner. This is a planet larger than the Earth, and it is still difficult to find the position of the owner of this planet, and it will take a lot of effort. Just when Arango wanted to lower his head and ask Lu Yuan and Alice if there was any good way after all the dust settled, he discovered that Lu Yuan and Alice had disappeared. A deep pit was left at their previous position. From top to bottom, it was almost bottomless. Only then did he know that they had already acted in their own way. Arango hurriedly chased after him. Following the deep pit, Arango quickly caught up with Lu Yuan and Alice. It turns out that this planet has already been opened up under the steel armor on the surface, and there are hidden secrets inside. This planet has long been transformed into a hollow space, and there are many passages inside, but Lu Yuan and Alice have perspective vision, so they can naturally find out what's going on inside. Can this passage be used to find the owner of this planet? Arango asked. Alice thought for a while. I don't know, do not know. Anyway, as long as you fight all the way, the master will show up. Lu Yuan said, a particularly arrogant and direct and effective method. They are not here to be guests. As long as they destroy the past along the way, even if they don't know the whereabouts of the planet's owner, the other party will definitely show up. Unless the other party doesn't want this planet anymore. Orango secretly wiped his cold sweat. These two people are too tough. He even had an illusion. Which side is the villain? If it wasn't for the owner of this planet's fortress to attack Orango's home planet, he felt that they were the villains now. Aren't they attacking other planets? Well, is Doomsday a superhero? Isn't Doomsday the supervillain? Careful. Suddenly, as the three of them went deeper, traps suddenly appeared around the passage in front of them. The first is various machine gun weapons, but instead of firing ordinary bullets, they fire laser rays. Orango was startled and quickly emitted a cloud of green energy to protect himself. Then he saw that Lu Yuan and Alice didn't even bother to hide much, and even sent out heat rays, directly shooting at the opposite mechanism. Their heat ray is not only powerful, but can also change direction at will, not only canceling all the laser rays fired from the opposite side, but also quickly sweeping away all activated mechanisms. Alice withdrew the heat ray and looked at Orango with a strange expression on her face. What are you doing? Orango put away the protective cover in a daze. He definitely can't be compared with them. Those laser rays are deadly to him. The power of Green Lantern comes from the green light ring, and most Green Lanterns are originally ordinary people's physiques. The green light ring is ideal. The stronger the willpower, the stronger the power it can exert. But in front of Lu Yuan and Alice, Orango felt a sense of powerlessness. He didn't dare to imagine how powerful they were, and even less dare to imagine what would happen if they were enemies. Fortunately, he had a good attitude because he was rescued by Alice once. Otherwise, it would be bad. Orango secretly feared and rejoiced, and followed the footsteps of the two, continuing to walk deep into the planet. Then at the next stage, they were again ambushed by the enemy. This time, a group of heavily armed soldiers appeared. They wore heavy protective armor, and not only were each of them equipped with powerful weapons, they even set up several positional guns in advance. This is a bit of an exaggeration. When the enemy launched a position run, the entire aisle was covered. Sure enough, just as Lu Yuan and Alice guessed, the enemy was watching their every move all the time, and had prepared an ambush in advance, just waiting for them to throw themselves into the trap. However, who threw himself into the trap? When Lu Yuan and Alice passed through the enemy's firepower network unscathed, even undefended, as if walking in a courtyard, the enemy on the opposite side panicked. Only Orango had to put on a green energy shield all over his body, and he didn't dare to force his way through. The enemy obviously didn't expect the enemy to be so powerful, and couldn't help but panic. Don't panic, attack. One of the guys leading the team shouted, and set up the laser weapon first to launch a second round of attacks. But at this moment, a golden light came to him in an instant. Lu Yuan stood in front of him with a flat expression, just looking at him indifferently. The latter froze for a moment, then felt a strong force coming, and felt his consciousness fly away. It was Lu Yuan who knocked his head off. They didn't come to be beaten, and the counterattack began. 45. With the current strength and physical fitness of Lu Yuan and Alice, it is already very difficult to have an attack that can hurt them in the world. But this does not mean that they have to be beaten passively. No one wants to be beaten. So Lu Yuan made a decisive move, and instantly appeared in front of the soldier leading the team, and with a random swipe, the upper body of the opponent flew out in a whirl. The others were taken aback when they saw this situation, but instead of flinching, they attacked immediately. The soldiers were a little flustered at first, but the death of the captain inspired their fighting spirit instead. It seems that the relationship between the soldiers in this team is very good, and the captain is usually very charismatic. But so what? While admiring, Lu Yuan stiffly withstood the attacks of all weapons, and then walked up to one soldier after another step by step, then raised his hand and waved away, reaping their lives casually. In the blink of an eye, there were headless corpses that had fallen to the ground. Every head was blown off by him. Those powerful thick armors couldn't block Lu Yuan's attack either. Orango hid behind and was wiping cold sweat. He was not afraid of killing people, but Lu Yuan's attitude and expression were very scary. Alice came to Lu Yuan's side with a normal expression, raised her hands and turned them into puddles of water, and gently helped Lu Yuan wipe off the blood that he accidentally got on. Lu Yuan shook his head. It's not necessary. There will be many enemies to come, and unless he kills with his eyes while driving the heat ray all the way, there will always be blood. Alice snorted softly. I don't want to touch dirty things. As she said that, she took the initiative to hold that hand. It turned out that she wanted to hold it. Lu Yuan just smiled and let her mess around. The two of them didn't take this place seriously at all, just like they used to stroll in the virgin forest around their home, just strolling in the garden, and continued to walk deeper. Urango was saddened. He was completely ignored. Not only his strength, but also his sense of existence became transparent. But he couldn't help but keep up, obediently falling behind the two of them, getting closer and closer to the core of the planet, although the entire planet has been transformed into a fortress. In order to maintain the integrity of the planet, the necessary core cannot be destroyed. There are countless planets and celestial bodies in the universe, especially those fixed stars with terrible gravity. If the planet originally lost its core and its own gravity, it would have collapsed long ago. Lu Yuan didn't know where the enemy's big boss was, but he knew that as long as he kept going to the core, the opponent would be forced out by him sooner or later. Sure enough, as the three of them got deeper and deeper, the road was not peaceful, and they began to encounter more and more organs, as well as more and more frequent attacks and ambushes by enemy soldiers. But those little soldiers and institutions were useless. All institutions were leveled, and all enemy soldiers were wiped out. The enemy became more and more aware of Lu Yuan's strength and irresistibility. They used a layer of steel plates more than 10 meters thick to block the passage, but Lu Yuan kicked them flying and killed a group of soldiers. They have caused the floor to sink suddenly, and beneath it are buried countless sharp traps. As a result, the three of them flew directly over. Was that trap a joke? Then there are flamethrowers, absolute zero freezing, toxin-filled cosmic fungi, and even rooms filled with magma at the same temperature as the core of the sun. All the traps were easily cracked by Lu Yuan. Facing the flamethrower, he blew it out with a breath of frozen air. Facing the absolutely freezing ice, he directly melted a heat ray in the past. In the face of the poison of the cosmic fungus, immunity has evolved automatically without doing anything. Not to mention the magma at the same temperature as the core of the sun, Lu Yuan and Alice just felt nostalgic and stayed for a while because they had submerged in the magma and took a little bath. Even Urango was dumbfounded, thinking they were going too far. The enemy is working so hard. Can't you just cooperate a little bit? It doesn't hurt much, but it's extremely insulting. They don't pay attention to each other too much. In this way, Lu Yuan always walked in the front, followed by Alice, and then Urango at the back. The three of them easily arrived at the core area of the planet. There is an extremely spacious space there, and the entire planet is almost hollowed out, including huge amounts of underground space around the core. The core of the planet is a black hole-like sphere with huge amounts of it, exuding a scorching breath in order to keep the core intact. It is fixed here by high-tech technology, and the core is sealed in a transparent glass wall. The reason why it didn't collapse here is because those steel passages also acted as supports. If those glass walls are broken and the core is destroyed now, the planet will probably fall apart by itself, right? But before Lu Yuan took another look at the core, suddenly, a huge body, surrounded by countless heavily armed soldiers, came to this space from the other side with heavy steps. You let the enemy intrude here? What a bunch of trash. What use do I need you? The big guy yelled angrily, suddenly violently, and suddenly waved his big hand behind him. Hearing a series of puff sounds, those soldiers who were caught off guard were instantly slapped to death by his slap. The rest of the soldiers were dumbfounded and stood there looking at each other in bewilderment. The big guy didn't continue to vent his anger with his hands. He snorted coldly, turned around again, and walked into this space, bypassing the core area and appearing in front of Lu Yuan and the others. Appearing in front of Lu Yuan and the others was a titan with yellow skin and a layer of tights armor, more than 2 meters tall. He glanced at the three of Lu Yuan, raised his hands and shouted, "How dare you offend my territory? Do you know who I am? I am the warlord and I am Mungo." Mungo, the warlord, is also a cosmic tyrant, and has even had many outstanding achievements. After the death of the famous event Superman, he also created a mechanical Superman sent to the Earth, and then turned the city of Green Lantern Hal Jordan into ruins, causing the death of nearly 7 million people. He also once had a record of defeating Superman, including the combination of Superman and Martian Manhunter. Even the Green Lantern Corps was once wiped out by him. Even in the story of Urango, he had a difficult battle with the Yellow Monster. Maybe it was with Mungo? At least the tribute here is the plot of Urango. He is the warlord. He is Mungo. Lu Yuan picked out his ears with his hands and asked Alice beside him, "By the way, do people with a bit of fame have to be like this? Then I have to too. I am Doomsday." Accompanied by a burst of energy fluctuations, Lu Yuan's body began to grow rapidly, and then he revealed his true body again, turning into an even bigger monster, easily over 3 meters tall. He is Doomsday. 46. Faced with Meng Ge's strong declaration, Lu Yuan did not back down and directly revealed his true body. Now Mungo's momentum was overwhelmed. Mungo is only about 2.5 meters tall, while Lu Yuan and Darkseid are both over 3 meters tall. Moreover, although Meng Gu is also physically fit, Lu Yuan, as Doomsday, is covered with huge exploding muscle mass, as if there is a pile of boulders hanging on his body. The two sides immediately judged each other. Meng Ge's expression is ugly. He will not show timidity because of the opponent's appearance, but he is a bit bigger. So what? How dare you offend my warlord? I want you to become my slaves and perform for me every day in my arena, Mungo roared, as if Lu Yuan and the others were so heinous. However, he seemed to have forgotten that they were the intruders. It's just that Lu Yuan didn't bother to investigate the relationship between intruders and not intruders. The truth is that the fist is big. It's the so-called law of the jungle, which is an eternal truth. If you are not strong enough, you will be beaten, and if you are beaten, you will stand at attention. Want to beg for forgiveness? That was wishful thinking. That's why Lu Yuan didn't care about this, and he didn't even bother to pay attention to the other party's clamor. He just squeezed his fist and sneered, "Warlord? So you are very good at fighting? Don't let me down." As he spoke, Lu Yuan directly strode forward. Behind him, Orango was on his way to help. Alice raised her hand and stopped Orango. That's his prey. Don't you see that he is about to enjoy it? You can go with me to deal with other people. In addition to Mungo, he also brought a large army. Apart from the part of the people behind him who was wiped out by himself, there were more soldiers there. Alice turned her attention to those people, and Orango had no choice but to give up the idea of helping Lu Yuan deal with the enemy. At this time, Lu Yuan had already rushed in front of Meng Gu, and the two met face to face. "Ignorant people, you will pay the price for offending Meng Gu," Meng Gu roared at Lu Yuan. But when he stood in front of Lu Yuan at the moment, his once huge body was shortened by more than one head. He looked like a child yelling at adults. Lu Yuan even opened his mouth and sneered, "Is all you have left to shout? Show me your strength as a warlord. If you don't satisfy me, I will tear you apart." He was even more straightforward. If this opponent couldn't satisfy him, he would definitely tear Mungo in half. A guy who dares to shout without strength, and a guy who dares to make him look forward to it in vain, should be damned originally. Since Meng Gu dared to call himself a warlord, he naturally didn't just talk about it. He took the lead and punched Lu Yuan in the chest. I have to say that Mungo is still very powerful. He once defeated Superman and teamed up with Martian Manhunter. Definitely, it was also because Superman and Martian Manhunter had fought beforehand because of some things. They had not yet recovered. The situation was defeated by Mungo in one fell swoop. That's why even Lu Yuan was a little surprised, stepping on the steel deck, plowing out 2 ravine marks along the way, and retreated a distance of more than 10 meters. But he stopped immediately, patted the place where he was hit, and asked with a sneer, "Is this all your strength?" It turned out that he was not injured after all. After all, he was the ruthless character who once confronted Darkseid head-on, and beat Darkseid head-on twice, and even killed Darkseid in the end. Lu Yuan's power is far beyond Meng Ge's imagination. What? Mungo was dumbfounded. It seemed that it was indeed a full blow from his anger. However, Lu Yuan was unharmed? How can that be? Just when Meng Gu looked incredible, Lu Yuan rushed back again with big strides. "It's up to me. Let you see the real power," Lu Yuan said, coming to Meng Gu, waving his big paws unceremoniously and smashing down. He raised his right hand and swung it forward fiercely, then swung it back to the left, and then swung it down again, repeating this several times. Meng Gu hurriedly raised his arms and crossed them in front of him. When Lu Yuan's big hand landed on his arm, there was only a click. First, the armor on Meng Ge's arm shattered, and then Lu Yuan's attack came again. This time he could only bite the bullet and use his own defense to resist. There was another crisp sound, but this time, it was Mungo's bones. "What?" Meng Gu let out a scream. Lu Yuan's strength was far beyond his imagination, and he felt so terrifying and irresistible. But it's not over yet. Just as described before, Lu Yuan's attacks were like a storm, one after another, slamming on Meng Ge's body. Mungo at the moment can only defend passively, but his arm has been broken. How should he resist next? Meng Gu ignored the shock, gritted his teeth, stomped on the ground, and backed up a lot. "Huh." Lu Yuan pretended to be surprised. "Aren't you a warlord? You still go backwards?" Meng-gu ignored Lu Yuan's ridicule. He finally knew how terrifying the enemy he was facing was far beyond what he could resist head-on. The most important thing is, don't look at Mungo's claim to be a warlord, and he even has so many subordinates. But in fact, on this planetary fortress, he is the only one who can still see his fighting power, and the others don't have to count on it. In other words, Mungo has no helpers to count on at all. If it is an enemy that he can't deal with, he can only run away. Anyway, it wasn't the first time. Meng-gu didn't have any psychological burden at all, and he would jump up when he kicked the ground hard. But Lu Yuan would not let him escape from under his nose, and directly turned into a huge amount of golden light and rushed towards him. Meng-ji's plan was to break through the steel plate above his head to find a chance to escape. His plan succeeded, but he didn't break through with his own strength, but was hit by Lu Yuan's shoulder on his chest, and then he was pushed hard go out. The two left this space just like that, and crashed countless devices all the way from the planet's core underground, and finally broke through the surface deck and returned to the planet's surface. After flying out, Mungo raised his head and spat out a big mouthful of blood. Even his consciousness was a little fuzzy. He just felt as if he was about to lose consciousness in his chest, and he didn't know the severity of the injury. Lu Yuan broke several ribs in this blow. That's it. A whisper that seemed to come from hell came from beside him. Meng-gu subconsciously turned his head to look, and found Lu Yuan standing beside him. His eyes widened involuntarily, showing a terrified expression. Lu Yuan simply raised a pair of big hands, and wrapped his legs with his left and right hands. "What are you doing?" "No," Mungo yelled in horror. He already guessed what Lu Yuan was going to do next. But Lu Yuan just sneered, and began to increase his strength with his hands. He wants to keep his promise. 47. In fact, Mungo is very aggrieved, because he was originally a very powerful character, and even caused huge amounts of trouble for Superhero and the Justice League. And his ability is not only shown, in fact, he can also emit a kind of light as a means of attack, including but not limited to emitting from both eyes. He can emit terrible light from the whole body. For example, when Lu Yuan picked up his legs to fulfill his promise and tear him in half, in order to resist, Meng-gu burst out with terrible light all over his body. But Lu Yuan completely ignored his light and continued to increase strength in his hands. The reason why Meng-gu was aggrieved was that he met the unreasonable Lu Yuan. No matter how strong Mungo is, he is definitely not as good as Darkseid. And the Lu Yuan he faced even defeated and killed Darkseid. Even Lu Yuan is not the kind of person who will show mercy. His fighting style is so decisive and merciless. If it were someone else, Mungo might be allowed to give full play to his strength. But what he happened to meet was Lu Yuan, who had maimed Mungo with a stormy attack, and now it was going to tear him apart. "You have lived up to my expectations, and you dare to shout there? You want to die." Lu Yuan didn't growl until now, which was different from Meng-ji's previous shouts. This was to pronounce Meng-ji's death. Meng-gu said in his heart that it was not what I asked you to expect. Who failed you? Damn, what kind of monster is this? But it was too late for him to say it. He only heard a click. Mungo froze, and his eyes widened. Could it be? In the next second, Lu Yuan fought with both hands. Crackling. Mungo was torn apart from his legs abruptly. In fact, with Lu Yuan's strength, Meng-gu could be torn apart immediately, but he deliberately increased his strength bit by bit, making Meng-gu feel enough fear. It wasn't until the end that he finally tore Mungo apart in one fell swoop. Mungo died just like that. A potential supervillain died so aggrieved. He should be very unwilling, right? Mungo was once the master of a certain planetary civilization, and even more so, the tyrant there. But then he was overthrown by his own planet and kicked out. Then, from nowhere, Mungo got a powerful force. He planned to conquer some planets and get enough men, and then use this planet fortress as a base to fight back. But now, that's the end of it all. He met Lu Yuan, and Doomsday brought ruin and death to him. And after Lu Yuan killed Meng-gu, he threw his body out like trash. A mass of golden light enveloped Lu Yuan, and when the golden light dissipated, Lu Yuan returned to human form again. He was still dressed in a decent white suit, floating in the sky with his arms folded, casually scanning the entire planetary fortress. Lu Yuan discovered that although the planet's fortress is huge, there are not many men under Mungo, and the one Alice and Arango are destroying now is the last group. He didn't bother to go back at the moment, and raised his head to look at the universe farther away. Since this journey is said to be an adventurous journey, in addition to seeing the splendor of those universes, necessary opponents are definitely needed. What's more, if there is no strong enough opponent for him to challenge, how can he reflect his own value? But if they're all of this kind, it's a waste of time and emotion. Lu Yuan snorted coldly, still showing disdain for Menggu. Obviously she was so boastful before. But this is the end? It really disappointed him. But he doesn't think about how powerful he is now. To put it bluntly, Darkseid is already the most powerful villain in the universe. He has almost cleared a game, even the final boss. How many people can catch his eyes now? Unless you get involved in the multi-universe from now on, even the super-universe and the omniverse. If the universe is divided into one level, in my opinion, it can be divided into single planet, planet surrounded by satellites, fixed star system, nebula, galaxy, galaxies like the Milky Way, single universe, multi-universe, the super-universe, and finally the omniverse. An infinite number of single universes and parallel universes form a multi-universe, while an infinite multi-universe is a super-universe, an infinite number of super-universes is a super-universe, and an infinite number of super-universes is an omnipotent universe. In other words, an omnipotent universe contains countless universes. Even the entire DC universe is an omnipotent universe, and the countless stories that happen in the DC universe are only in one corner of this omnipotent universe. You can imagine how endless and vast this is. Even in the New 52 era, the so-called 52 Earths are just representatives taken out separately, and the universe represented by these 52 Earths is only put in a closet. And outside the closet, there is actually still the concept of an infinite multi-universe and an infinite dark multi-universe. It's just that they are differentiated. The same is true of the Marvel universe next door. Under the omnipotent universe, everything is an ant. Even if it is an ant that came out of the omnipotent universe, it is also an existence of detachment in the single universe or even the super-large universe. Dimensions and realms are not in the same realm. Lu Yuan showed a pensive look. Sooner or later, he will enter a brighter and bigger world. But before that, he had to continue to accumulate strength. At this moment, from the hole that Lu Yuan came out of before, Alice and Arango finally solved the enemies in the underground core and flew out one after another. What are you thinking? Looking expectant? Is that guy really good? Alice immediately noticed Lu Yuan's appearance, flew to him, and asked curiously. Lu Yuan curled his lips. That trash? It's just a show. Alice smiled, and didn't continue to ask why he looked expectant. Anyway, he would tell her if he wanted to. Sure enough, Lu Yuan said. After solving this planet, we may be able to look at other fixed stars. Alice was a little puzzled. Lu Yuan did say to find fixed stars that are brighter and hotter than the sun, and try to see if they can increase their strength. With their current state, even if they continue to stay in the fixed star of the sun for another 100,000 years, there will not be much improvement, and the effect is not even as good as the effect of one of the previous 100,000 years. Including those 100,000 years, the effect in the next few thousand years is also very small, but Alice's strength has been improved until she wakes up. But why did you suddenly put this matter on the agenda? Could it be that there is no trace of a powerful enemy? 48. There are no enemies left on this planet. Lu Yuan told Arango the good news. Arango wiped his forehead completely subconsciously. It is obvious that he has a lizard head, actually a dragon's head, and it stands to reason that he is a temperature-changing animal, also known as cold-blooded animals. Cold-blooded animals do not have their own mechanism for regulating body temperature, so they do not have sweat glands. But today, he wiped off his sweat a few times, and gained a deeper understanding of the strength of Lu Yuan and Alice. But he still wanted to thank them, and quickly lowered his head. Thank you so much for your help. If it wasn't for you, I really don't know what I should do. This is his home planet, and the lives here are almost all of his own kind. If Menggu is allowed to kill here, it will be too late when other Green Lanterns rush over. He couldn't imagine what would happen without the help of Lu Yuan and Alice. Lu Yuan and Alice have always been very satisfied with Arango's attitude. Otherwise, they would not have offered to help him. Lu Yuan even recalled the plot that Arango once ruled the ancient Earth. I really don't know how the Greek mythology protects the Earth, and I don't know if such a humble Arango is just pretending, or because his hometown was destroyed and his temperament changed drastically during his battle with the Yellow Monster. What do you want to do with this planetary fortress? Lu Yuan asked. Help people to the end. If Arango still needs help, it doesn't matter if he helps out because of his good attitude. I don't know, Arango said with a wry smile. Oh, his star shouldn't need to be collected, and it doesn't belong to a certain civilization by its appearance. Even if there was a civilization before, it should be destroyed by these guys. Even if it is released, it's all trouble here. Then it's ruined, Lu Yuan said bluntly. Before Arango asked Lu Yuan how to destroy a planet, Lu Yuan and Alice had already acted together tacitly, their eyes lit up at the same time, releasing 4 terrifying golden heat rays side by side. At the beginning, the heat rays were still side by side, but when they fell to the surface, they suddenly dispersed and turned to 4 directions. Then, 4 heat rays began to be cast on the surface of the planet. The temperature of the 4 heat rays suddenly reached a terrifying temperature of 20,000 degrees Celsius. Because of the blockade of the atmosphere, there is no need to worry about affecting Arango's hometown. It's just that Arango couldn't take it any longer and hurried away to the outside of the atmosphere. Anyway, he can survive in space. Then, Arango saw that from the place where the 4 heat rays touched, the entire planetary fortress was melting, whether it was the steel armor made by Mungo before, or the original surface material of the planet. Everything is quietly disappearing. The horror of heat ray is reflected. When heat ray is strong enough, it can disintegrate and melt all substances in the world, even planets. Even this is equivalent to pushing this planet to the core of the sun. One can imagine how destructive it is. In the end, even 10 minutes were useless, and the final core was ruthlessly destroyed by Lu Yuan and Alice. The huge planet just disappeared, as if it had never existed. In the end, there is only a massive atmosphere left here, which is slowly dissipating with the death of the planet, and it seems to be drawn, and it begins to drift towards Arango's hometown. The scale of this atmosphere was originally not very large, and the oxygen content should not cause drastic changes in the environment of Arango's hometown, so they didn't care. Please be a guest with me, and let us express our gratitude to you with the highest respect, Arango excitedly invited. Originally, he was going to invite Lu Yuan and Alice to be guests, but Lu Yuan changed his mind, shook his head, and declined politely. Forget it, we suddenly have a new plan. Speaking of which, you Green Lanterns should know more about the sector you are in charge of. How about you and your information curry? Help me find out if there is a fixed star that is brighter and hotter than the sun. Just take this as a thank you gift. Lu Yuan also had an idea. The curry of the Green Lantern Corps on Planet OA recorded the experience of the Green Lanterns and the knowledge accumulated by the Asgardians in the universe during their long lives. Instead of searching aimlessly in the vast universe, it's better to use the knowledge reserves of the Green Lantern Corps. Although Arango didn't know what Lu Yuan and Alice's plans were, this trivial matter was nothing. Sure enough, Arango quickly gave a reply. There is a fixed star in the 666 sector, because the mass is too large, the brightness is too high, and the temperature is too hot. The entire fixed star system does not have one life. Even planets that once existed are consumed by it. I think it will meet your requirements. The fixed star is called the Devourer, definitely not Marvel's planet Devourer. Its brightness is 50 million times higher than that of the sun, and its core temperature can reach 1 trillion degrees. The brightest fixed star currently found on the Earth is 8.7 million times that of the Earth. The hottest fixed star is said to have a surface temperature of 1 million degrees, and the inferred core temperature is exactly 1 trillion degrees. Since even the real world and the existing technology of the Earth have calculated and discovered the existence of such a fixed star, then in this virtual DC universe, it is not surprising that there is such a fixed star. It's just that the distance is a bit far away. The solar system and the Milky Way where fixed star is located are divided into sectors 2813 and 2814, but it belongs to sector 666. Even if it flies past at superluminal speed, it will probably take a few years, right? Because the diameter of the Milky Way is about 100,000 light-years, it is conceivable how many galaxies as large as the Milky Way will be crossed on this road. Even the Milky Way is not considered the largest galaxy, and there are galaxies countless times larger than the Milky Way. I can send you there. I can open the wormhole and let you go there directly. Arango took the initiative to mention his ability, and the green light ring can indeed do this. Naturally, Lu Yuan and Alice would not refuse his kindness. In fact, the Omega rays that Lu Yuan and Alice have integrated can also open the door of space, but they don't know the coordinates, and random space teleportation is very dangerous, and God knows where it will go. So in the end, Arango returned a favor. After asking about the coordinates of the so-called Devourer's fixed star, he opened a wormhole portal. Lu Yuan and Alice said goodbye to him and disappeared through the portal. When they reappeared, they had come to another space of the universe. Speaking of Arango, why did you suddenly ask about my side? Speaking of Arango, I seem to have noticed some movement there recently, but speaking of Arango, I was a little scared so I didn't investigate. Saying get up, Arango, are you going to help me? Speaking up, you can shut up. 49. This is the 666 sector, and this is where the fixed star known as the Devourer is located. When Lu Yuan and Alice came here, they not only saw the extremely dazzling fixed star, but also felt the scorching temperature and the boundless silence. There is nothing here, there is no life here, there are not even other planets, there is only a fixed star here, and nothing more. Again, with Lu Yuan and Alice's strength and current state, the light that surpasses the sun by 10 million times, and the temperature of 1 million degrees on the surface, are not a threat to them. They even felt that their own strength was increasing rapidly. When Lu Yuan was inquiring about it, he suggested that the best one would be fixed star with yellow light. Although this fixed star is too bright and too hot, causing its light to be more yang blue. But at least it's not red, and the red fixed star originally wouldn't be this hot. It is said that the higher the temperature of fixed star, the more blue the color will be. It seems so. Shwa. Suddenly, a green light and shadow flew from a distance, aiming directly at here. Green Lantern, that is the Green Lantern responsible for guarding the 666th sector. Arango asked him about the coordinates of the Devourer, here, before. It seems that he already knew about their arrival and came to ask about it. Lu Yuan and Alice were not surprised either. It was a normal operation. Soon, that Green Lantern came in front of the two of them. Speaking of which, you are friends of Mr. Arango, right? Speaking of it, why did you come here? Speaking of it, you seem to be very interested in that fixed star? Speaking of it, don't get too close, talking about it. What's wrong with you? Lu Yuan interrupted him impatiently. Oh, speaking of it, I have a colloquial phrase. Speaking of it, I haven't said it yet. Speaking of it, it's a characteristic of our civilization. Speaking of it, I can't control it. So don't mind me. Speaking of it, my name is Moro. Speaking of it, enough is enough. Lu Yuan interrupted Mo Luo again with black lines all over his head. What kind of weirdness is this? Let him continue talking. It is very suspicious of the number of words. Alice on the side also stared blankly at this weird Green Lantern, then covered her mouth and let out a snicker. This was the first time she saw Lu Yuan's expression like this. This Moro is obviously a certain planetary civilization in this sector universe. But what is strange is that he has a face similar to that of a human. In Moro's own words, speaking of it, we are indeed very similar. Speaking of the universe is so big, it is said that many civilizations have similar appearances. Maybe the creator was lazy when creating the universe and life? Because Mo Luo's spoken words were too annoying, Lu Yuan decided to end the topic. Speaking of which, we will go to the core of this fixed star next, and maybe stay for a few years. Speaking of it, do you want to go together? He did it on purpose, but it wasn't sarcasm, it was just a little grumpy. Mo Luo smiled awkwardly. It's unnecessary to say. This guy. Lu Yuan shook his head, turned around and shook his head at Alice, signaling her to leave quickly. If he heard a few more words from him, he would collapse. Mo Luo obviously didn't dare to get close to the Devourer, so he could only stay on the sidelines, watching Lu Yuan and Alice approaching the Devourer. But suddenly, a voice suddenly sounded in Lu Yuan's ear, roaring and shouting. Intelligent life has been locked. Lu Yuan Al from Krypton. Anger is surging in your heart. You belong to the Red Lantern Corps. Huh. Lu Yuan was taken aback. What is it? Alice next to her turned her head to look at Lu Yuan. What's wrong? It seemed that Alice, who was beside Lu Yuan, obviously didn't hear what happened just now. Lu Yuan looked back at Mo Luo subconsciously, thinking he was the one who made a fool of himself. As a result, Lu Yuan noticed that Mo Luo opened his mouth wide, with a look of seeing a ghost on his face, and pointed forward with his hand, shouting, Speaking of which, I sense something moving here. Speaking of which, what is it? Lu Yuan didn't bother to care about his mantra, and quickly turned his head to look at the Devourer in front again. I saw that the fixed star was emitting a bright red energy. Originally it was a blue fixed star, but now it was dyed red. Alice. Lu Yuan subconsciously pulled Alice behind him. Alice is just an ordinary Kryptonian. She is not Doomsday. Even if she has become a higher dimensional life, this planet is not simple. With such a terrifying brightness and temperature, maybe she will still be affected. In the end, Alice said with a puzzled look, I didn't feel any difference. Normally, the light of the red fixed star will weaken the strength of the Kryptonians, and even cause a deadly threat in severe cases. Therefore, among Superman's classic enemies, the threat of the poisonous sun is considered to be among the best. Here only refers to the threat to Superman, not the strength ranking. But Alice didn't feel any strange feeling, and could still feel her own strength increasing rapidly. What's going on here? Lu Yuan was also a little confused. However, soon, the previous voice sounded in his ears again, That angry roar seemed to be offended by some beast. Even Lu Yuan could feel that the other party was full of endless anger, shouting, "Smart life has been locked." Lu Yuan Al from Krypton. Anger boils in your heart. You belong to the Red Lantern Corps. The same words as before. What the F ** K is the Red Lantern Corps? I haven't heard of it. Wait, Red Lantern Corps? Lu Yuan suddenly remembered something. It's not that he hasn't heard of it, but he really knows it. Since the Green Lantern Corps exists in the universe, it is conceivable that there will be legions of other colors. The most classic is the Legion of Seven Lanterns. Red light, green light, yellow light, blue light, purple light, blue light, and finally orange light. Red lights represent anger, green lights represent will, yellow lights represent fear, orange lights represent greed, blue lights represent hope, purple lights represent love, and green lights represent mercy. In addition, two major events also lead to black lights representing death and white lights representing life. What's more, in addition to these visible emotional spectrums that can be discerned by the naked eye, there are many invisible emotional spectra, such as gamma rays, ultraviolet light and X-rays, etc. Therefore, the Red Lantern Corps exists, and what the Red Lantern Corps represents is anger. No wonder that voice was so angry, as if it was burning with endless anger. But why did it find itself? Could it be that there is a red light ring hidden here? Just when Lu Yuan felt strange, he saw that the bright red energy emerging from this fixed star suddenly condensed into a ball, and finally transformed into a blood slaughter bowl. 50. Blood Slaughter, the lamp beast of the Red Lantern Corps, is also the embodiment of the red emotional spectrum representing anger, which is the original of the red emotional spectrum. It was a terrifying creature that came out of the sun and set foot in the universe and starry sky. It was bigger than ordinary planets, more terrifying than many monsters in legendary myths, and more powerful than many mythical beasts. It was surrounded by red energy, as if it had been in flames. It has a pair of terrifying and sharp long horns, not like the curved horns of an ordinary bull, but more like a spear, like an antelope. It is full of vigorous muscles, and it walked over with strides, and finally stopped in front of Lu Yuan, staring at a pair of eyes that were also filled with infinite anger, and let out a roar that seemed to shake the entire universe. Intelligent life has been locked. Lu Yuan Al from Krypton. Anger boils in your heart. You belong to the Red Lantern Corps. Lu Yuan put away the initial surprise, frowned, and roared in the same way. You have said it 3 times. What kind of shit is the Red Lantern Corps? I don't take it seriously. And my anger is far beyond your imagination. In fact, Lu Yuan did not lie about this. He didn't seem to be surprised why the blood slaughter and the Red Lantern Corps came to him. It's because there's always been an anger in his heart that hasn't been vented yet. He has never told Alice that he still resents what Krypton did back then, and that anger has always been suppressed in his heart. But he knew better that although Alice would not stop herself from destroying Krypton, she would be sad. So Lu Yuan has never thought about destroying Krypton, and he knows that Krypton will be destroyed by itself sooner or later. But today seems to be an opportunity to activate the blood slaughter. Could it be that the blood slaughter of cattle has been suppressed here before? After all, anger is not a positive emotion, and the Red Lantern Corps has always appeared as a villain. If this incident happened because of him, then Lu Yuan would be responsible for settling it. Lu Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly, ready to strike at any time. But at this moment, the accident happened again. A thought came from the devourer behind the bloody bowl. I, Adashitas, a loot star, would like to join the Red Lantern Corps. The hot blood and scarlet anger are taken from the bones of Wei Han. The deep hatred boiled in the heart and forged the road to hell for your generation. That passage, which seemed like a poem, was the oath to join the Red Lantern Corps. It turns out that to join these legions, you need to say the correct oath, and the oaths of each color legion are different. In particular, the oath of the largest Green Lantern Corps has the most tricks, and almost everyone in the main Green Lantern has its own characteristics. And the Rithian named Ataxidas, after he finished his oath. After Xue Tunyo took a deep look at Lu Yuan, it suddenly turned into a blood-red energy again, with a red ring mixed in it, and turned back to the fixed star. Lu Yuan turned on supervision and immediately noticed something strange on the surface of fixed star. There, a tall, muscular man put on a red light ring, and his whole body was immersed in the blood-like bright red energy. There were 4 other people around him, but they were already dead, even turned into bones. The people who can survive on fixed star are not simple originally, so the bones of those 4 people are still preserved, especially that Adashitas who just got the Red Lantern ring, As the blood-like energy finally formed a red lantern core battle suit on the surface of his body, he revealed his true colors. Adashidas raised his head as if aware of it, revealing a ferocious face. Unlike Moro with a broken mouth, Adashidas has an obvious alien face, especially when he opens his bloody mouth full of sharp fangs, which is faintly chilling. Suddenly, Emo Luo behind him finally came to his senses and said subconsciously, "No, didn't the Loot Star perish long ago? Why are there survivors?" "Because I haven't taken revenge on you, the Green Lantern Corps, and those damned Asgardians." Adashidas heard Moro's words and turned into a bright red figure from the fixed star rushed out. He came in front of the three of Lu Yuan, opened his mouth and let out a big laugh. "I finally succeeded. Sure enough, my prophecy is true. Only in this way, only here, only by gathering the common anger of the five of us, and at the cost of 4 of their lives, we finally turned on the power of the red light. And now, it's time for me to take revenge. The Asgardians of the universe, the Green Lantern Corps, and the damn robot hunters, all of which I keep in mind, and I will make you pay the price. Root Planet, and the enmity of all living souls in Sector 666, must not end like this." Adashida's voice became louder and louder, and finally turned into a roar, making no effort to conceal his hatred and boundless anger. Lu Yuan frowned and reminded, "You have grudges against others, but why are you yelling at me?" Adashidas roared again. "Since you also have anger, why don't you join me? After my revenge is over, I will also help you to avenge your revenge." Lu Yuan refused without any hesitation. "It's up to you? Forget it." He didn't even care about the invitation to slaughter a bull, let alone Adashidas. He has already heard that the Red Lantern Corps of this universe has just been born. So that is to say, if Lu Yuan just accepted the invitation of the Bloody Bull slaughter, he could even become the first member of the Red Lantern Corps, and even the Red Lantern Corps becomes its own personal regiment. He nearly cut off Adashida's plan. "Since you didn't agree before, let alone now?" Adashidas stared at Lu Yuan in front of him. Lu Yuan naturally did not back down. At this time, Emo Luo's broken reminder started again, saying, "Speaking of which, why do you want to seek revenge from us? Speaking of which, your Loot Star and all the civilizations here were destroyed by the Devoured Ones? This fixed star is called the Devourer." "Huh." Adashidas turned his eyes and attention to Moro, as if he had heard some joke and laughed. "So that's what you recorded? Asgardians. Then I'll tell you what happened back then. Let's see the truth. Why is Sector 666 so dead? That's because the Asgardians sent their mechanical army to destroy it with their own hands. The Asgardians of the universe, a group of people who claim to protect the universe, but they turned out to be the main culprit that caused the extinction of a large number of civilizations in the 666 sectors. Not to mention that Moro was stunned. Even Alice showed an expression of interest. "Tell me quickly." Lu Yuan glanced at Alice.
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card, directly on my channel, or right here on the screen. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.